Good morning. Welcome to the September meeting of the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government. I'm at Executive Director Berlin. Talk about the logistics of the meeting.
Thank you, Chair James. This meeting is being held pursuant to notice and in accordance with the provisions of the state's open meeting law and executive law, section 94. Both the conference room we're using at the Commission's offices in Albany at 540 Broadway and the meeting room we are using the New York State Conference Center at 25 Beaver Street in Manhattan are open to the public during public session, and public session is also being live streamed, and the link can be found on the Commission's website at ethics.ny.gov. I will add that Commissioner Austin is participating in the meeting remotely pursuant to Public Officers Law, Section 103-A of the Commission's rules and procedures for remote participation on account of extraordinary circumstances. And I can state that between the conference center in Manhattan and our offices in Albany, we have a quorum for the meeting.
Thank you. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of the July 25th Commission meeting. Are there any additions or corrections that have come in?
None have come in.
The first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes and motion to approve minutes. Commissioner Harris,
Second.
second by Commissioner Gorman. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I thought the notations were really good. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is report from staff. Executive Director Gorman.
Yes, thank you, Chair James. The operations reports for both July and August can be found under tab B in the agenda book for today's meeting. Call the Commissioner's attention to the first page of each report. That is August and July. As before, the first column in the reports is the monthly count for the most recent month, in this case August, and for the July report, July. The prior monthly count is in the next column. Comparison to the corresponding months in 2024 is the third column. Fourth column is year-to-date statistics for 2025, and then a comparison to the same period of time in 2024. In August and July combined, the Commission received 17 tips, complaints, and referrals. A total of 4 matters, formal investigations were opened in that period of time. There were no closings in August. In July, we did have closings, and that figure was 10 closed the July 23rd meeting. Net at the end of the month, there were 217 pending matters and 54 open investigations, and that's after netting out the 10 closings in July and the additional 17 matters that came in the 2-month period, and the 4 matters that were advanced to formal investigations. Again, there's a continuing increase in the number of investigations and referrals coming into the agency. We think the additional complaints, at least, are attributable in part to the expanded education initiative that is called for by EXECUTIVE and that the Commission has been advancing since its inception in 2022. There may be other factors, but at this time that appears to be a driver. Are there any questions about the investigation and enforcement matters? We'll proceed to the second page. Ethics. July was a record month. Prior all-time record of 156 earlier in the year. 166 guidance requests came in that single month. Another 131 in August, usually a light month, for a total increase of 297. As before, the largest single slug of those are requests for outside activity approval, 101 of the 297 requests, followed by post-employment inquiries, total of 68, and then a miscellany of other kinds of requests. The year-to-date total as of the end of August is 1,136 advice guidance requests coming in. That's compared to 823 in the prior year. The prior year itself was a record, 2024 over 2023.
Nice. For
Commissioner.
a minute. Are these numbers being updated? 'Cause I'm just seeing your numbers.
If you look at the August, there are two reports back to
Yeah,
back.
so this is July.
Under tab
Flip
B.
some more.
So if you go 9 pages in, you'll see that the second
Tab B?
report begins.
No.
So,
One more page. Yeah, so he's in
Oh,
this
you
one.
updated. Okay.
So,
yeah, we're in the I should say we're in the process of creating a new vehicle for
Okay.
tracking
Thank you.
and presenting the operations data. So that'll give us greater facility. Right now, the system unfortunately is so crude that we have to do monthly statistics.
I see.
And we can't do a combined report currently. We are working towards achieving it. Almost certainly, this ongoing increase in advice and guidance requests is attributable to the increased training. You'll see when we get to the training report that we're very, very far along toward completing the initiative of having every member of the executive workforce, and frankly, every member of the legislature and every legislative employee complete 2 ethics trainings, at least 1 live and 1 on-demand or remote training. The impact of that surely is an increased sensitivity to the requirements of the ethics laws. And we have adjusted staff accordingly. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the meeting to meet the increased demand. And we've done some organizing that the commission approved at the July meeting. Questions? Page 3, each report is lobbying statistics. You'll see that the number of lobbyists is continuing to increase. We're still in the first year of the biennial period. So while the number as compared with 2024,
There's some
We're
feedback.
working on it. We're working on it.
Thank you.
yeah, if those individuals who are logged in remotely can use their devices,
I
that
think
might
it's
help.
feedback from New York and Kavita's trying to put it on noise removal. And if not, we might just have to have them mute until Commissioner Caraballo needs to talk, but we're working.
Yeah, she should have the button right in front of her. Okay,
Yeah, has that same setup.
maybe Martha needs to do that.
Oh, Kavita, did you put on noise removal?
We can't do that in this conference room. Or we tried to, so we're gonna see if this works. Otherwise, we'll just mute ourselves.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you can mute the WebEx connection though when you're not speaking, and that might help. Again, the increase in the number of lobbyists, corresponding increase in the number of clients. It's difficult to see the effect of that in this kind of report because we're looking back at 2024, which was well into the 3rd quarter of the 2nd year of the biennial period. So the numbers increase, the numbers of registrations increase. Therefore, the number of clients increases as we proceed through that. You'll see a steady increase in the year. And we're nearly up to the number, in terms of the number of clients and the number of principal lobbyists. We're nearly up to the figure in 2024. And we still have several months to go in the first year of the biennial period. August was not a biennial month. July was, and so you'll see that in July, over 5,100 bi-monthly reports and bi-monthly report amendments were submitted July was also a client semi-annual reporting month. And those are the reports from January through June of 2025. And over 3,800 of those reports came in. As the commission was surprised, and as the public was surprised in press releases, as lobbying leadership, along with communications division and our research data analysts, put out a report. This time, we've been doing bi-monthly summaries of preliminary data. This was our third cycle. And in this instance, we were able to put out preliminary bi-monthly data as well as client semi-annual data. And notably, as compared with last year's figures, which we were able to provide in that report, and we could go through it in more detail later in the agenda. See, the numbers are continuing to rise, and certainly we're on track at least to beat the record numbers spent on lobbying in 2024 as we go into at least the first half of 2025. The number of lobbying inquiries goes up, obviously, the reporting month. So in July, over 3,000 inquiries, both in and out, were registered. But even in August, traditionally slow month, over 2,300 communications went back and forth. And year to date, we're almost at 23,000 inquiries. 2 e-blasts went out to the lobbying community in July as well. Any questions? Financial disclosure, page 4 in both reports. Collectively, in July and August, the unit received over 2,300 financial disclosure statements. Another 297 failure to file notices were issued in August. There are 331 filings outstanding. That's a combined figure. That combines both the late notices, late filed or unfiled reports from the May 15th deadline, and then the further reports that were required from employees who joined the workforce after that and had the obligation to file financial disclosure statements within 30 days after commencing employment. Of the original tranche of 4,170 failure to file notices that were issued on June 10th, there are approximately 154 left outstanding at this point, and those will be the subject, or have been the subject of delinquency notices going out this week from the unit. There also are still outstanding a number of disclosure statements that were due from those who failed to file within 30 days of joining the workforce after May 15th. You will see later in the book, we discussed it a little bit at the last meeting, by agency, numbers of employees who filed late or failed to file, both in 2024 for the 2023 disclosures and again this year. And we can go through that in more detail. If there are any questions about those. Anything?
Yes, please. Sandy, I'm just curious. In looking at the delinquency notices outstanding, the number in July went up from June, and one would expect it to go down. Why is that? Is that an anomaly, or?
No, that's the effect of individuals coming into the workforce after the May 15th deadline, who have to file within 30 days of joining the workforce. And that's something that continues to occur throughout the year until we get back to the beginning of the year when we reset everything and it becomes the May 15th deadline for everybody in the workforce and everybody joining the workforce at that point. But again, the numbers from the thousands and thousands of failure to file notices that went out are down to 154 from the original June 10 failure to file notices based on the May 15th deadline. And we have only 177 left from the August 19th failure to file notices. And if you compare it to prior years, you see we're doing a little bit better than in the past. We would like to think, I don't want to blame everything on training, but we do think that increased sensitivity includes not only an awareness of what the requirements of the ethics laws are, but also an increased awareness of what the penalties are for not complying with requirements. And the penalty for failing to file a financial disclosure statement are quite severe, as high as $40,000 for that. So it's a very, very serious penalty. And I think the message is getting out. Nonetheless, and we've talked about this in the past, and we'll talk about it again, a huge amount of staff effort goes into bringing those late filers into compliance. Just generating the failure to file notices, thousands and thousands of them, is a burden, and then following up on those. Notwithstanding the fact that we're relatively lenient, and that's something we maybe need to consider. Under the statute, the initial failure to file notice gives the filer 15 days to comply without penalty. If we don't receive the filing within that 15-day period, the next step is a notice of delinquency, which, unlike the failure to file notice, is a public document that goes not only to the individual and the individual's agency, it also goes on our website. And the next step after that is the commencement of enforcement action, again with a $40,000 penalty for failure to comply. So it's serious. And we do have a number of individuals, we'll get to it in a bit, who persist in not filing on time. It's something we need to clamp down on. Any other questions? Next page is audit and training, rather. Getting ahead of myself. Again, we have 2 months worth of reports combined and updated. July, August numbers as reported in the book are over 21,000 for July and August. That's a combination of live trainings attended remotely, conducted by our agency, our training group, live trainings conducted by the various agencies in the executive branch, and then on-demand training. We do have the new MP4 module out there, so everyone in the workforce should have access to the on-demand training now. It's a little kludgy still. We're automating the certification process. That should be completed imminently. And once that's done, we'll have a direct data feed into our system of trainings that are taken using the MP4 on demand. That's a major innovation. The next step is to have an HTML as well as a SCORM version. I've got my acronyms lined up correctly. That will give us the ability to make a fully functional on-demand training with test questions you have to pass in order to complete the module, available to the entire workforce with the automatic collection of the data from it. Right now, we're somewhat, and agency ethics officers as well, are kind of having to deal with a more cumbersome system where they have to collect the information. They're getting certifications. If they don't have SLMS available to them, if they have SLMS, it's still a kludgy process to enter the data. We want to make that much more seamless. Since the book went out, the August figure, total figure, for example, has gone from 3,284 to 7,729. And we haven't even reached the reporting deadline for the August data, which doesn't happen till the end of the month. And we expect to see a major increase in that figure. The good news is that we're over 480,000 total trainings out of the 660,000 we're targeting. We do have a commitment from the MTA to have everyone in their workforce trained by the end of the year. That will boost the number by another 45 or 50,000. Those figures are already coming in. That's an on-demand training that our training group, our ethics group, has worked out with MTA. We expect that to work pretty well. But we're not hitting the number we need. We're now at the point where we need over 40,000 trainings to be completed. We believe statistically most of the outstanding trainings, not all of them, can be completed in an on-demand format. So once we've completely automated that process, there really should be no excuse for not getting the numbers up to where we want them. But we'll see.
Sandy, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
With the MP4 training, are we able to ascertain how many people have used the MP4 training? Since it's been-
We cannot do that. At the moment, we can't do that directly because when an individual completes a certification form pops up and they've got to print it out, we'll save it as a PDF and sign it and then get it to their ethics officers. The ethics officers have to get that into the statewide ethics training system. So there's a manual process. We're not seeing it automatically. Once we automate that, that will ease the process. And once our vendor, PDP, at Rockefeller College completes and we have drafts now that the unit is going back and forth with PDP on. Once we have the automated HTML version, we will be able to tell how many folks are using it. Now we find out indirectly through reporting by ethics officers back into the system. And there's a lag. I think at this point we have about 109 agencies that have reported their August figures. And that's actually ahead of time because the deadline is not until next week. But it is cumbersome. And you'll see the numbers are increasing progressively, but it takes a lot of time. And it's a lot of work by our unit to get the numbers. And fairly, it's a fair amount of additional work for ethics officers to be entering the data. So the goal is to automate all of that. But it's a protracted process. We're getting there. Any other questions? Audit and review. Page 6 of both reports combined 123 random audits of lobbying filings were completed, bringing the year-to-date total to 410. Those reviews in July and August have produced 121 findings and recommendations and amendments to individual lobbying filings in 42 instances. The percentages are high. You'll see of the 410 year-to-date, lobbying audits completed 677 recommendations and findings resulting in more than half, 224 of the filings being amended. We're up to 819 year-to-date. Random FDS reviews, another 53 completed in July and August. Those generated 37 rails, requests for additional information letters. In 37 instances, year-to-date total is 444 rails out of 819 reviews completed. Targeted reviews, another 159 were completed. That's kind of the focus of attention now on the May filing. 205 year-to-date. And rails following that review, 159. In July and August, 79, more than half. And the same is true for the year-to-date figure of 205 targeted FDS reviews, 108 have produced rails. The review process, the audit process, is extremely productive. And we have, in fact, expanded the unit overall, and we're increasing its capacity. Any questions? Finally, communications, 18 FOIL requests in a total of 20 out over the 2-month period, over 1,300 pages of documentation produced. We have a total of 7 requests outstanding, all timely. That's only the tip of the iceberg handled by the communications group. Social media impressions continue to rise, postings continue to rise. We're up to more than 25,000 impressions, clicks this year, with almost 3,000 in August alone, and over nearly 6,000 for the 2-month period. It's a big number. Over 24,000 users of the website in August, and the total is now up to more than 250,000 over that period of time. 11 e-blasts went out, newsletters, 4 proactive outreaches, quite a bit of activity taking place. Any questions?
So are we able to ascertain whether there are new people checking our website?
They're
Or whether it's the same
identified as
people over-
unique users, so it's like a unique session on a device. But you don't know, like, I'd have to check to see if we know which people like looked at last year. I don't think Google Analytics gives you that detail. I'd have to check, but I can tell that our visitors are up 60% year over year. So we definitely are getting new people, I think, to get to that level.
We're literally getting more hits on the
Yeah.
website. Much of that's attributable to the enrichment of the website and many of the improvements that Emily and her group have introduced. We're also directing individuals as we train them to the website when they have questions about obligations under the ethics laws, as well as under the lobbying laws. So it's, it's not surprising that we're seeing more hits, and that's what we want. We want to be able to, we're providing a huge amount of information. We're pushing vast amounts of information out. And we're doing a huge amount of training. And it's a positive sign, albeit an indirect measurement of the effectiveness of all of that outreach and training that we're doing, that we're getting more and more hits on the website. It would be terrific if we had, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of folks also tuning into the commission meetings, but of course they have the convenience of being able to watch the recording in full afterwards, and they can focus on what they want. So we know there's a lot of time shifting taking place.
Do we know how many people have viewed the commission hearings on the website?
We do. It varies greatly by month, to like dozens to over 100, depending on what's going on. Some are typically lower. But yeah, we do.
Thanks. Okay, so,
Budget update,
any questions? Yeah.
unless there are any questions on the operation.
All right, the next budget update.
That's under tab C in the book. Dropping all the way to the bottom, you'll see that projecting cash surplus, a modest cash surplus this year of just over $270,000. That involves a combination of things, some adjustments in terms of amounts we budgeted for various things as a precaution, and where we need a cushion for them. But it's also adequate to cover completion of our staffing plan. We're very close to doing that, as I'll discuss in a moment. We do need more space. We desperately need more space in working with the Office of General Services. They've actually identified additional space in this building, the 540 Broadway building in Albany. And we'll be taking a look at that. Among other things, we need more space for our training unit. And some space where they can have some isolation to conduct their trainings. But we also have a lot of other people coming into the agency. We're full up in New York now. All of our space is full. So the additional expansion will have to be here in Albany. We're making some adjustments and pay classifications for a number of employees. We can accommodate that in the budget. Those have been long overdue. We can take care of those. And again, we can complete the staffing plan and meet our this fiscal year expenses. Next year will be a different question. We don't have a budget call yet for the 26, 27 budget. We anticipate over the fall, some point this month, if not at the very beginning of October. But this is about the time of year when we can expect to see that. And we've begun preparing for that. You'll see that there's bumpiness, as there always is, in our spending and our outward projections. You'll see that in July, there were additional payments. The number went up, particularly for contractual services. About half of that, 125,000 and change, was a payment for our investigation enforcement case management system, new system Case IQ, which will be up and running shortly. As soon as the migration of data is completed, we'll have that. You can see in August a jump to 264,000 and change. Biggest part of that, $178,573, was the long overdue payment to Hogan Lovells that was allocated specifically in the budget voted by the legislature this past year. So that is now off the books and paid, but that's why that number jumped in that period of time. Any questions?
Did you say that you've exhausted all the space in New York City? So you are, as opposed to looking for more space in New York City, you're moving over to looking for space here.
Yeah, we completed our staffing for now in New York City. So fill the positions we intended to fill.
With this,
In New York, we could conceivably create space. I have to look at space requirements, maybe for an admin. In New York, we don't have that currently in the budget for New York. The remaining positions that would hardly fill are all in the
so who's that admin space for in New York? That's not filled.
we have partial cubicle left. But it's usable space. We don't want to be in a position where we've got somebody working in the conference room. We need to use the conference room for other purposes. That creates a displacement.
Yeah.
But we think it's all workable. We just desperately need more space in Albany, and Mariana and Sarah have been working assiduously with OGS for over a year now in reconfiguring the space here, utilizing it to the max in accordance with OGS requirements and standards. Now we're at the point where we need to acquire more space, and we have an amount in the budget to cover the additional rent. Questions? Next item is Commissioner per diem. It's under tab D. I won't go through the figures. They're in the book that will be posted in accordance with the Commission's resolutions. You'll see that the total paid, and that covers the May and June commission meetings and preparation hours, for certain commissioners for January through May. The total is $44,325.80. The year-to-date total, that's in terms of payments in this fiscal year, that's $56,907.48. That compares with the prior fiscal year, when the total for Diem payout was just over $227,000. So we're doing well with the budget. Any questions? The next payment for Diems in the process of putting them through will be October 8th. Questions? Recruiting update. Since our last meeting, we have, in accordance with the Commission's approval of the adjustments to expanded staffing plan, a number of promotions that I'd like to announce at this time. Emily DeSantis, who has been serving as our Director of Communications, Public Affairs, and our Chief Information Officer, has taken on the role of Chief of Staff to me and Director of External Affairs. She will continue to oversee as well the communications divisions. That's a welcome change in structure. Emily will be helping out in project planning and overseeing all of the projects that we're moving forward. So congratulations to Emily. Erin Lynch, who's in the room today, has been promoted to Senior Deputy Director of Ethics. She will be working with Michael Sander, Director, overseeing the many and varied operations of the division, which include not only the advice and guidance unit, but the training unit, the FDS unit, the intake unit, as well as the FDS review portion of the compliance audit and review group. Well deserved, and congratulations to Barry. In addition, Megan Hennigan will now be serving as Deputy Director of Advice and Guidance. As we've discussed, the number of advice and guidance requests has soared with the advent of EXEMPTION and all of the other things that we've been doing. And so Megan will be working with Erin and Michael Sand to stay on top of those. I have to congratulate the unit. We've been doing an incredibly comprehensive job of managing this huge influx of requests we're getting, and turning them around very, very quickly. Very, very capable. So congratulations to Megan as well. In addition, we have brought in a number of new individuals. Ashley Ames has come in as an assistant filing specialist in the lobbying unit. William Hughes, who you met as you came in to the offices today here at Albany, has been brought on as a confidential clerk. Sean Murphy has joined the agency as a compliance auditor. These are all important new additions to our staff. So welcome to everybody. Congratulations to everybody on their promotions and new assignments and responsibilities. And again, we're looking for space for to make sure that everybody has a place to sit and a place to work. It's very, very exciting. In a long period of time, and I do have to thank all of the staff who have been working extremely hard over the past 3 years since the advent of the agency to make everything work, often without the staffing levels that we would have liked. So it's really an amazing accomplishment that we've got where we are now. Not only is help on the way, help is arrived. This is very positive. We are actively recruiting. We've got not quite a handful of remaining positions that we're filling. We are actively recruiting for another training associate position in the education unit, a data specialist who will help with all the things we were talking about in helping agencies get their data into the system and getting our data into the systems and in training individuals in using our systems. We've extended an offer which has been accepted to an assistant deputy director in the training unit. That's part of the reorganization that the commission approved in July. We now have to go through the steps of getting the appropriate documentation to the division of budget, take the necessary approvals. We're looking forward to having that position filled very soon. We have another position, training position. We've identified a candidate for that in the training unit. That will add much needed capability in that unit, enable us to push out even more live trainings. Quite important going into, especially this part of the year and going forward, and meeting the obligations we'll have, ensuring that everyone in the entire workforce from 2026 forward receives at least one ethics training every year, either live training or on-demand. That's 330,000 plus potentially trainings every year. And so we've had to grow to meet that. And in addition, a candidate has been identified for a position in the communications group, an assistant communications specialist. I know the commission was eager to have that position. We've got a candidate for it. We'll add some well-needed capabilities in the group. And those are the remaining positions. Again, we have candidates identified at various stages of approval for 3 of those 4 positions. Any questions? Next item, attachment 8. As I mentioned, in the latest iteration of the work the lobbying division has been doing together with the communications group and Kathy Kaufman, our research data specialist. This is the 3rd iteration of the preliminary report. The goal is to get lobbying data out to the public, out to the press in as timely a way as possible. All the data is always available, virtually real time, as it's filed in the lobbying application. Anyone can log in and use the public search query and pull up data on any filer. But the aggregations of data are a little bit more complicated to do. The commission has put out annual compilations of data and breakdowns showing how much money not only is being spent in general on lobbying activity, but who is spending it, general subject matter they're lobbying on, the legislation that's being lobbied on, and cut it in a variety of ways. But that data has been coming out months after the annual period has ended. What we're trying to do now is get the data out as soon as the reports come in, or as soon as practical after the reports come in. So bi-monthly reports are coming in every 2 months. They come in 2 to 3 weeks with a grace period after each bi-monthly period ends. And the same is true for clients file semi-annual reports. Same cycle. So January to June, reports are due July 15th. There's a grace period. And we're cutting the data the day after the grace period ends and putting together compilations. The report that's in the book under tab E is the first time We've done both a bi-monthly report and a client semi-annual report. It received a fair amount of press attention. And it's a good snapshot of the lobbying activity that has occurred in the current legislative session. See which lobbyists were most engaged, which clients were engaging lobbyists, the focus of lobbying activity. We'd like to do even more with the data. But it really is showcasing the ability of the agency to take the data it collects and make it accessible and intelligible to those who have an interest and in efforts that are being made to influence government decision-making. Really a critical thing to focus attention on. And it's one of the most important undertakings of the agency. I think Carol, Emily.
Yeah, I just want to give a little update because I know Commissioner Edwards had asked in the past about dashboards. And we've made some progress in the past couple of weeks where we actually now have access to Tableau and our server for creating dashboards. So Kathy is hard at work trying out different designs. It probably won't be in time for the next bi-monthly, but certainly within the next few months, we hope to convert the paper to a dashboard online so we could have a news release with a link where people could access the data online. So we're moving along finally after some hard work on our end to get the technology. So that's good news.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I should add that in addition to that, the lobbying group, Compliance Audit and Review, Ethics, and Emily and her group and Kathy have been looking at systems that are maintained, lobbying systems, and advice and guidance systems, financial disclosure systems, maintained by agencies in other states, in municipalities around the country. We've gotten with some of their vendors to get ideas about the kinds of technology, the reporting methodologies, the systems they have in place. No state, certainly no municipality, comes anywhere near the volume of work that our lobbying division is doing. No one comes close to 60, 70 plus thousand filings annually. No other state is handling, or municipality is handling almost 40,000 financial disclosure statements. And certainly none are doing it with the kind of level of staffing that this agency has. And we'll talk about it in greater depth in a couple of minutes. We also have constraints on what we can do. And technology has moved to the point where maybe those constraints don't make as much sense. And where we have the opportunity to work around, but tremendous amount of work has been going into not only producing these reports in a more timely way, but also improving the technology for bringing the data in, presenting the data, managing the data, and doing the things that we're statutorily required to do with the data.
Sandy, the one thing I would just add, just to kind of explain the difference in the snapshots, you'll see the bi-monthly snapshots are really mostly about compensation, right? Lobbyist compensation, but what's great about the client one, that gives you a really big picture of total spending. So it includes expenses and all the big lobbying, like media campaigns you might see. So the snapshot with the CSA is even more informative, I would say, but the bi-monthly snapshots are great too. But this one in particular is very informative of what's going on in the past 6 months.
Thank you. It's nice work.
Yeah, and we think as we continue to do this, there'll be more attention and I think greater dependency. And the more we do, the more requests we get from good government groups, from media and press to do even more.
Here's a question.
This is really minor. One of the tables in the report is top 10 most lobbied bills on page 15. It's number 7. I was just curious. It looks like that's according to the number of filings. I would think that the top most lobbied bill means like the number of hours or dollars spent on lobbying, and presumably there's some
Can't track
relationship there, right?
Just
That
yet.
is one of the things,
Yeah.
we're getting to it in
Yes.
the conference. That's
on
one
our
of
wish
our
list.
recommendations. We don't receive the data in a form that allows us to disaggregate it, if you will.
I guess then it's just a comment about the heading on the table. I would think maybe rather than most lobbied, it would seem more accurate to be to. It seems like what this actually captures is the most people or entities working on lobbying.
It's most frequently listed in their submissions. I mean, that's exactly what we're extracting, but you know, when, if a lobbyist or a client is lobbying 10 bills, it's quite possible that one is the focus of all of their activity, but they have to tell us, I mean, they're obliged legally to tell us about all the activity they've conducted, but they don't break it down.
Yeah, so it's just a question about the,
I think it was reported, I guess.
Yeah, and you'll see, you know, a lot of it's budget bill. And, you know, budget bills have a lot of things going on in them. And they're not disaggregated. But that's something we want to focus on. Yeah, and the terminology is a challenge because of that. Any other questions? All right, that brings us to tab F. We have been discussing, the staff have been discussing with commissioners the challenge of encouraging financial disclosure statement filers to get their statements in on time. We do have statutory constraints at this time on imposing late fees, a lot of staff time, and the financial disclosure unit goes into following up with tracking down, frankly pestering those who have not gotten their financial disclosure statements in a timely way. And it's not a bureaucratic exercise. The whole point of requiring financial disclosure, and if you look at the history of financial disclosures, statement requirements, hard-fought battle to be in a position to collect that data. It's only collected from about 10% of the workforce, but it's important for the reasons stated in the statute to detect and frankly help filers avoid conflicts of interest, financial conflict of interest. And if the data is not coming in, we're not getting to see it, the public's not getting to see it. We talked last time about repeat filers. Linda Funk, who directs the unit, and her staff put together a report that shows the number of individuals who are late both this year and last year. There's a good deal of turnover in the workforce, and those who are required to file. Repetitiveness diminishes as you add years to it. But you can see from the report that, you know, there are some, not surprisingly, hot spots. MTA has a huge chunk of repeat offenders, and that's broken out. Transit Authority, it's part of MTA, comes next. SUNY Stony Brook, Roswell Park Cancer Institute, Department of Health, Metro North, again, a component of MTA, has a number of repeat offenders, and Nassau County Medical Center, Nassau Healthcare Corp. as a bunch. But the total represents a significant part of the workforce. So that's almost 1,300 repeat offenders out of just over 4,000 late filers we had this year. And provides support for the notion of getting the authority to have some kind of a penalty imposed on those who are late in their filings. You know, we looked at prior commission meetings, we looked at what what is done in New York City by COIB in imposing penalties. Again, our statute's a little bit more constraining in that respect, but that's something we want to take a closer look at.
You know, I'm initially misunderstood this. These are late filers and not total filers, so it's hard for me to get a sense of what percentage do the total filers represent the total population or the total workforce. Because I was really thinking, it just seems unfair to those who are submitting on time. And I suspect that's a larger number in comparison. And so, you know, we've had this discussion about late fees. And although I have some reservation about applying them, I just think that when you look at numbers like this, it's an injustice that those who do file on time, you know, in comparison to those who don't, not penalized for not having done so. And it's not as you say, it's not a laborious task.
No, and if individuals for one reason or another need additional time, we have a mechanism in the statute, they can request it.
Yeah.
We don't give anyone a particularly hard time in having some additional time. You know, certainly if they need tax information and they've got an extension of time to file their taxes, they can get an extension of time for us or you know, for other good cause shown. There's really no good reason for anyone to be recalcitrant in filing their financial disclosure statement. And if they're filing electronically, and they've repeat offenders obviously eventually filed, relatively low number of those who end up with notices of delinquency, their information is already in the system. It's just a question of updating it.
Commissioner Austin has his hand up.
Ah, Commissioner Austin.
At the last meeting or a meeting before, I had suggested that we establish guidelines for our hearing officers and ultimately us in terms of making determinations of individuals who have violated the ethics rules and have that as an aggravating condition of the failure not to file, just like the failure not to attend training. That would be something that would be a further aggravation in terms of determining sanction. Is that something that would be available to us or something we could look into as part of it? Otherwise, I disagree with Commissioner Edwards. Those who file on time are doing their jobs. We don't give gold stars. We appreciate that they do it, but those who don't do their jobs are the ones we have to address. And I don't think that's unjust.
I think you misunderstood me. I didn't say that.
The point was that those who are not filing on time are doing a disservice to those who do,
Right.
Who get their information on time.
And I withdraw that
time.
comment. And I apologize.
And when it comes to yet another topic we want to discuss in greater depth, when it comes to penalization for violations of the ethics laws, there's discretion in the imposition of penalties, and without prejudice to many other considerations. I mean, certainly one's willful non-compliance with an obvious requirement would seem to be an aggravating factor that could be taken into account. And it would not be unusual for an individual who's violating other provisions of the ethics laws to also be in violation. And it's not an uncommon occurrence with the financial disclosure requirements, and not just in terms of timely or untimely filing, but substantively in terms of the information they're supplying. So it does often play a part in that part of the enforcement scheme. Any other questions or observations? Commissioner Grunwald?
Just a question. So looking at this and knowing the workload that the follow-up imposes on staff, is staff prepared to make a recommendation at this time or in the near future about whether or not we should consider amending the statute along the lines that we saw New York City have?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
And as part of the comprehensive, as we discussed last time, as part of the comprehensive review process,
Okay,
we do think that that's something that absolutely should be addressed.
thank you.
Is that going to be put out in terms of the public hearing later this month?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in your presentation.
Oh, okay.
Stay tuned.
She
Stay
can't
tuned.
wait.
You're building the site.
We jump right in.
You're almost there, we're almost there.
Couple more items. Okay, unless there's anything else on that. Next item, chair report, committee reports.
The next item is the chair report and committee reports. I did not have any report. Any of the committees have any reports at this time? I know the Education and Legislation Committee will be meeting.
It's, yeah,
next
in
few
time
weeks.
for the next meeting.
Yeah, we have targeted October 6th for legislation and education committee meetings to go over various items. And then the administration committee has on the books, on the calendar, a September 16 meeting where from staff's perspective, we'd like to focus on the proposed budget for the next fiscal year. And again, we don't have the call for the budget yet, but we're anticipating
What
it's
day?
imminent. We've started working on that.
What date is that?
That's September 16th.
Which is,
So
yes, the 16th. Yep.
it's the 16th in the afternoon.
In person? I didn't, not the
And
Saturday.
it is also the day, Emily reminded me that commissioners will be talking about the public hearing.
It's
so-
a WebEx meeting.
We're going to have to
That
titrate.
one is
It's a busy month coming up.
The admin is a WebEx.
The admin will
That's
be,
in person,
doesn't it?
What date?
September
That's the
16th.
16th. What we can decide is time, during the break, see what everybody's schedule.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so the next item is the comprehensive review.
Yes. And then,
You did it at the Berlin.
yes, you have the commissioners have the draft slides.
Excuse me,
Commissioner Caraballo has a question.
thank you. So I have a question about the October 6th meeting. It just seems really, it's what is it, like a week after the public meeting? I'm just wondering if that's enough time to put together all the comments and that's all.
You're talking about the legislative committee meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, so I believe it was a few months ago when we did the full dates for the last half of the year. That date was selected and it's about 2 weeks after the public hearing so that we will have time to pull out the legislative proposals. We're going to focus just on the legislative proposals for that meeting, not regulations or other proposals. And we'll be able to have the comments that we received related to each legislative proposal so that at that meeting we can prioritize, which ones we want to advance on the legislative agenda for next year, knowing that we can't advance all that might have merit. And we can look at what we did last year and say, do we want to advance all of these again? Or, looking at the traction we had and chances for success. So really prioritizing which ones would go for next year. And like I said, we won't be able to do, all dozen or 2 dozen proposals that are going to be out for public comment in the first year, but we can say, let's focus on this one for this year. And, this one has merit, but let's focus on these two and put that one on the back burner to maybe next year. Because this is going to be multi-year planning and strategizing on how to advance it.
I mean, it's mostly staff really doing that work. So like, if you guys feel that's good enough, that's fine. It's like 10 days. But you guys do that report, I just, if hopefully we'll get it in time for the meeting on the 6th with enough time to review.
Yes, and as we get comments, as we did previously, we'll send them to the commissioners as we get them in so that you will be able to have them to read thoroughly yourselves beforehand. So as we receive them. And I can just give you an update. Right now, we have 4 people who have RSVP to provide comments. But I think once this is put forward, it will be a reminder to some folks to sign up and speak. And we will get more people, and I'll also be reaching out to some folks who I know would probably be interested, but just haven't RSVP'd yet, to ensure that we'll probably have about the same as we did last year. I'm figuring about 10.
Question on that. So when we are inviting members of the public to provide comments, those are both related to the comprehensive review and to the
And whatever
legislative
else.
agenda to next year. But it sounds like you're distributing the comprehensive review materials so that people are aware that this is on our
Yes,
radar and will be able to
Exactly.
decide for themselves.
Yeah,
That's
we
great.
have a news release ready to go
Great.
tomorrow. We want to get advance of the commission, provided you all say, yep, get it out, then that's what we'll do.
Wonderful. Thank you.
It's tight. It's tight. I should add that our general counsel presented a recap prior meeting of our legislative proposals, how they fared, and related legislative proposals. So we have that background, as well as all the work the legislation committee and the commission has done leading up to the proposals we have, and those are all being fed back into the comprehensive review process.
And if I could just add one thing, the reason we moved everything up this year is we're hoping that after the legislative committee meeting, we'll get consensus so that it can be voted on at the October meeting. And then we can actually start booking meetings with legislators for staff, because last year we got the feedback that it's really hard when budget is going on, and then budget took that extra month, remember? So we wanted to start laying the groundwork in the fall, and really start planning meetings for November, December. So we're not waiting till the following year. So that's kind of why we pushed everything up this year.
But
All right, so you want to begin?
we can begin. We can get the slides up. Let me just say by way of introduction, and I know everybody's aware of it, the commission is called upon by the executive law, section 94(1)D, to undertake a review of its regulations and its predecessors' advisory opinions and for consistency with the statutes and as compared with one another, and also to look at the effectiveness of the entire structure in enforcing the ethics and lobbying laws. And since its inception, the commission has been focused on that. The initiative began in earnest in terms of the comprehensive review process itself, 2023. But even before that, we were moving forward with those initiatives. So in 2022, going into 2023, we revised, conformed the entire body of regulations, all of Part 20 of the 19, Chapter 20 of 19 NYCRR. And we looked at every group of lobbying and ethics regulations that impact the commission's jurisdiction and its operations. And all the regulations were conformed to the requirements of ECRA and were formally adopted by the commission. And we weren't merely carrying over the prior regulations. We made substantive changes to conform to ECRA. For example, under ECRA, as compared with the prior act, PIRA, there's an opportunity for the commission to authorize staff through the executive director to issue subpoenas on notice to the chair. And so the commission adopted a regulation effectuating that authority, as well as authorizing staff in advance of initiating a formal investigation to use process, again, on notice to the chair, and to communicate outside the agency in order to move the process along of evaluating complaints and referrals coming into the commission for the presence or absence of specific credible evidence of a violation of law within the commission's jurisdiction. That's one of the changes, substantive changes that was made. In terms of the review process itself, the commission authorized the proposal to move forward with a process that included surveys of interested and regulated communities, both within and without state government. So in addition to reviewing recommendations of prior commissions, going back to the FERC Commission, which provides the genesis of the regulatory scheme that we enforce, as well as reports that were prepared by JACO, which had a similar charge to ours to conduct a comprehensive review. There was an independent ethics review commission that was formed under PIRA, which also reported and made recommendations with respect to amendments and improvements in the ethics laws to improve the effectiveness of the scheme. We looked at reports prepared by the New York City Bar Association. One aptly entitled, "Is There Hope for JACO?" Which concluded in the positive. In 2023, going into 2024, we conducted public hearings. We had the first round table of the commission. We developed the commission's first legislative agenda. And we also, meaning Michael Sander, Director of Ethics, presented to commissioners a comprehensive review of the seminal advisory opinions, cutting across the full scope of the ethics laws enforced by the agency. In the summer of 24, we surveyed the regulated communities, as well as internal ethics officers and general counsel. On the external side, we sent our survey to over 10,000 potential respondents and received a statistically significant response. Internally, we went to all ethics officers again, as well as to heads of all agencies. In addition, we surveyed the various prosecutors' offices in the state, all counties, all 4 federal district attorneys' offices. We went to the good government groups. We went to bar associations, both at the state and local level. And we reached out to anyone conceivably who could respond to our inquiries having to do with improvements to the ethics laws, deficiencies in the ethics and lobbying laws, areas of improvement that they could suggest, as well as questions about the clarity of the laws and challenges or not that they confront in complying with the laws. And we presented the survey responses to the commission, which were vetted through an outside vendor. In 2024 through 25, we created and implemented survey response plans. And we began the process of preparing selectively based on the responses we had gotten in the survey process and our own internal recommendations. We began looking at the laws, regulations, and overall compliance schemes administered in other states and municipalities on a selective basis. In addition, earlier this year, we conducted an internal survey of our own staff drawing on the expertise that we have within the agency, which is unparalleled anywhere in the country, for their input, suggestions, advice, both on positive, proactive things we can do to improve the effectiveness of the scheme, as well as shortcomings, deficiencies, or resource needs that they identified as important for us to address. So we've incorporated into the comprehensive review process, not just looking at laws, regulations, advisory opinions, potential changes and adjustments to it, but also the availability of resources and the resource needs to have an effective compliance and enforcement structure. We also, as I mentioned earlier, began looking at technology being used by other like agencies, not only in New York, but around the country, to find out what tools are available for improving the effectiveness of what we do. And the culmination of that over the past summer and now being presented to you are a series of recommendations based on insights gleaned from agencies within the state, agencies, law enforcement agencies outside the state, bar associations, again, good government groups, the lobbying community overall, and the legal community. For purposes of organization, go to the next slide. For purposes of organization, and this goes back to the very inception of the process, and to a structure that had been proposed initially by Vice Chair Ayers and other commissioners. We approach this analytically in terms of the areas of concentration or activity conducted by the commission. Somewhat replicating the divisional structure, unit structure within the agency, but really looking at it from a substantive legal perspective. So we have the commission's advice, ethics advice and guidance role. First, we have the training and education, key part of what the agency does. We have the financial disclosure component of the work of the agency. We have the oversight, regulation, and disclosure of lobbying activities overseen and administered by the agency. We have a responsibility to provide transparency, both in activities conducted by government reported to us and individuals in their financial disclosure statements, and also of those who seek to influence lobbyists and lobbying clients' decision-making in government. We have the compliance audit and review function, which sits on top of both the financial disclosure system and the lobbying disclosure system to ensure that there's compliance. And both to detect potential conflicts of interest and also to detect departures from both the disclosure requirements and the limitations that exist in the lobbying laws and permissible lobbying activity. And finally, a kind of meta structure on top of or beside all of that is investigations and enforcement. Looking at the detection, the adjudication, penalization of violations of the ethics and lobbying laws. So that's the structural methodology. After going through a lot of different ways of slicing and dicing what we do, that seemed to be the most practical and accessible way to do it. And you'll see in terms of the legislative proposals, kind of logical way to unpack the work of the agency. So first, big overriding, the question, is New York State system of ethics and lobbying regulation effective? And what changes maybe should be considered? So we have ethics advice and guidance. First time, a good deal, as you saw, in that very large compendium that Michael Sand put together and presented to commissioners in looking at the advisory opinions. A vast amount of the advice and guidance that exists, apart from instructional material and guides and the like that are helpful materials provided through the commission, primarily on its website, but also in the Blue Book, which all commissioners were provided with. I think the public is well aware of it, and which we're actively in the process of updating. Great compilations, but in terms of learning, and this is something that Chair James pointed out, to understand the ethics laws and how they're administered and interpreted in the state, one often has to dig through a very large body of advisory opinions. And it's not the most accessible system in the world. The Lobbying Act, by comparison, also generated a large body of advisory opinions, but ultimately the decision, and I think wisely, was made to take those the interpretations and the elaborations of the statute, absolutely required to do, take them out of the advisory opinions and put them into formally articulated regulations. The question is has the time arrived where that's necessary or appropriate to do on the ethics side as well? And you'll see our conclusion is certainly with respect to certain areas, that probably makes a lot of sense. It's not an insubstantial undertaking, and it may have limitations. It may take away flexibility. One sees the waves and patterns in ethics opinions over the years since 1987, 1988, 1989, when the first Ethics Commission was formed. Interpretations have changed, and sometimes radically, over time. And while it's nice to have that flexibility from the perspective of somebody in the workforce who needs to comply with those requirements, it's not the easiest way to do it. Second question is, do we need to take a position on some things on which no position has yet been taken formally, but where we do have issues arising and which are addressed not in formal advisory opinions, but have been addressed in informal advisory opinions, where we just have to get guidance to the individual. You've seen a number of instances under Resolution 2302. Not only do we present to you proposed informal opinions involving agency heads and say what elected officials, we also come back to you when there's no existing precedent. There aren't many instances of that, but they do occur. And has the time arrived? Rather than creating formal advisory opinions, and we often internally go back and forth on that, has the time arrived to put some of those, anticipating those, put those into regulations? And a kind of ancillary question is, we have this huge body of informal advisory opinions. You can see that the number is increasing every single month. And the more education we put out, the more informal advisory opinions come through. Some of us are reading every one of them. And while there's consistency from our perspective, the individuals in the workforce who are governed by these don't see them. Right. As a matter of law, they're protected. And the question is whether those should be, and Keith has been working assiduously to develop a system. We're trying to distill the informal advisory opinions into something that's more accessible to the general public. But it's still what I would call almost a Talmudic process of working through this stuff. But there are some notable examples. There's nothing in the regulations or in the statute that helps an individual who's worked for several agencies or an agency like MTA, which has multiple components, determine what their prior agency is for purposes of the impact on them of the 2-year of the lifetime bar. We have something called the student exception. It makes huge sense. It's correct, but it's not in the regulation. It's not in the statute. It is in guidance materials, but it's not in the body of affirmative law. We have, and I don't want to call them exceptions, we have interpretations of the 2-year bar in particular that allows individuals leaving certain very large state agencies to work for contractors or vendors to those agencies. And those interpretations are necessary because individuals coming out of those agencies have specialized skills and expertise, and they need to be employed. There's nothing that says that after you work for state government, you have to sit at home for 2 years until you can take a job. And we want people to be able to use their skills outside. We just don't want them to be exercising undue influence. So we've erected lots of very understandable and defensible structures, but they're not embodied in affirmative law. We have similar things, part of it's statutory, that allow healthcare workers leaving government to continue taking care of patients, but also to complete certifications. And unless you really dig deeply into the advisory opinions, there's recent law on that, recent advisory opinion law on that, you're not going to know about it. And there are other examples of that.
So I just raised that, I didn't mean to interrupt, but, well, I guess I did mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So just thinking, I think it's wonderful that you're thinking these students through, and the way you frame it is fantastic. And just one thought I had is sort of, because I would imagine that even if we go through the process of codifying our currently existing advisory opinions into the regs and move that entire corpus of wisdom all into one place, which I think would make it much more accessible, we're still going to keep having informal opinions. That's going to continue to be part of our process. And we're going to continue to have commission votes where the commission interprets those regulations in particular cases, much of which will be inaccessible to the public of necessity, right? We can't share with the public today. We voted on an investigations case and there was a consensus among the commission that the reg needs X. But so I just think one further question going forward is sort of, do we just have an annual process where we sort of rope in all the interpreting that we've done during the year and have an annual amendment of the regs to fold it in? Do we have something on the website where, we add comments to the regs? Where
Annotations.
Annotations. And like I think actually the New York State lawyers ethics bodies don't do a very good job of this, but some of the Midrashic commenters who have, produced incredibly expensive tomes that you can buy if you're ethical enough to pay $600 for that. You can see, well, the following advisory opinions interpret this reg. And like when you click on the reg, here are the advisory opinions. That obviously wouldn't reach the confidential things we do.
No.
But anyway, just a further question to think about is what's our system going to be going forward for maintaining the accessibility that we gain by regulationizing the existing body of, because we do, I think, have this problem on the commission where it's like, wait, didn't we discuss a case? And it's confidential, so it's not like we can go to the website and find it, but didn't we discuss a case last year where the commission thought X? We'd like to be consistent. I think it's an internal issue that we would benefit from as well, having a system for capturing those conversations to the extent that they
And bear in mind, it's not just us. There are 385 agencies with almost 300 ethics officers and lots of general counsel who are also interpreting and applying. And they likewise don't have direct access. They may see the informals for their agency because they're filtered through them, but they don't see what's happening with other agencies. So there are multiple systems out there interpreting the same body of law, and because we don't have them in regulations, they're not available. And as you say, these are confidential. So it's a complexity in the system, and we do. I should say, it's not a common occurrence, but on the investigation and enforcement side, we will, for example, periodically see instances where an agency's ethics officer didn't like something that we might think is okay, or vice versa. They approve something and didn't run it by our advice and guidance unit or ethics unit. And it's inconsistent with our precedent, which they may not be aware of because it's confidential. Right. So we have that issue. This is what preliminarily we've distilled our proposals down to. And just as I was discussing, the first point is how do we achieve uniformity across state government in the interpretation of these things? We did have one commentator at the first public hearing who complained that her agency, which is an academic institution, was much more rigorous in its application or interpretation of what you could or couldn't do as an outside activity than other academic institutions within the state system were.
And
And that's an,
And one, just to make sure that uniform handling also includes that we might decide that outside activity means something different in one set of institutions than in another set of
well,
institutions.
we have that question. has
Because of
come
the
up.
expectations of what a job is at a research facility as opposed to at an agency, you know?
No, exactly, and we've had that discussion, again, confidentially. We know it, but it's not accessible. Clarity in the gift threshold regulations. We have an FDS reporting structure that requires reporting above $1,000 threshold, yet we have a general definition in the Lobbying Act, what constitutes a gift. And we have the idea of nominal value. And how does nominal value, which we've been thinking of as $15, maybe we have to raise that because it hasn't been adjusted to inflation. But it's not going to go up to $1,000. Why do we have these two different standards going on? That's something that needs to at least be given some thought. Questions have been raised by commissioners in the past about travel approval requirements and process for agency heads. Those are the Part 931 official outside activity. You see those periodically coming to you for vetting. The statute, section 94, is built around the concept subsection 7B, that guidance sought from or given by our agency should be confidential. And the reason for that, the rationale for it is so as not to discourage individuals from reaching out to us and obtaining formal guidance from us. Yet at the same time, our regulations, depending upon the individual, may require them to the individual to go first to their agency ethics officer or agency head for approval. There's no corresponding confidentiality for that. So if somebody is would be discouraged from coming to us in the absence of confidentiality, what is the incentive or disincentive with respect to having to go first under our regulations to their agency ethics officer in a non-confidential setting to get whatever advice or predicate to our passing on it? So there's an inconsistency. It's one of the inconsistencies that exists between the law and the regulations. And one, I'll call it a brilliant suggestion, is to promote consistency by creating a mentorship program, having actual coordination and collaboration between our ethics staff, our advice and guidance staff, and agency ethics officers, both with respect to what the expectations are of ethics officers with respect to their part in achieving compliance with the ethics requirements and what they understand the role to be. It's yet another burden that we think it would be important for us to take on at a time when we have an increasing workload, but something that's really important to pursue.
So just one question, and please forgive me for not remembering. At one point, we discussed, I believe, a formal advisory opinion that would deal with what happens if somebody misrepresents our confidential advice and guidance. Did we vote to approve that?
Yes, waiver.
We did, waiver, okay, so that's,
Yeah, I think we did it in the form of an advisory opinion.
okay, so that would then be one of the things that we would talk about whether to make part of the regulatory scheme.
Yes,
As part of that other process.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
absolutely. Next. I'll try to speed this up a little bit. Training and education guiding question. These really focus not on the substance of the training, which is something we will be separately digging into after this first 3-year training cycle is completed. And we have the data, and this is, do we need monetary or other penalties to encourage members of the state workforce to comply with ethics training requirements? The goal of ethics training from our perspective, universal ethics training, is to move the culture in the state workplace toward, as a default, compliance with the ethics requirements that are imposed on all state workers. That is, putting the public interest ahead of individual interests and eschewing, avoiding conflicts of interest. If folks don't know what the rules are, then harder for them to be expected, although one would say ethics is somewhat intuitive, if not completely intuitive, should be. That's the purpose of the training. The other purpose of the training, of universal training, is to give the public confidence that the workforce knows what it can and can't do with respect to conflicts of interest and putting individual interest against the public good. And we don't know quite where we are, we'll have a much better idea after we get to the end of this first 3-year period, looking at training compliance. If we can't ensure that everybody is taking their training, we can't give the public the assurance that everyone in the workforce has the information they need. And do we need inducements to, like penalties for non-compliance, to bring about 100% compliance with the ethics requirements? Right now, in addition to moving people toward taking their training and working with ethics officers and other agency personnel to get their workers to take the training, we're also providing resources so the training can take place. So we're expanding our own training capabilities, and we're creating things like more accessible on-demand training to do it. We also have the fact that on the lobbying side, same situation exists. We don't have penalties for non-compliance with ethics training requirements, which are more relaxed for lobbyists and for lobbying clients. They only have to take the training every 3 years. And Carol and her group have, with the commission's assent, created regulations to make it even easier for trainings to be conducted in group settings, to have group certifications. There's literally no excuse for lobbyists and clients not to comply with the training requirements. But we do have some residual band of 20%, give or take, who don't do it. And we know there's at least one individual out there who's says that their clients are being advised. There's no penalty. Isn't it? Do we have to counter that by having penalties? We also have the disconnect that Section 94 of the executive law requires training for clients. The Lobbying Act hasn't caught up with that. We also have the fact that the registration cycle for lobbyists and clients is a biennial cycle, but the training requirement is triennial, which doesn't make sense. We had talked earlier on, should there be a requirement that if you want to register as a lobbyist, you have to show that you've taken the ethics training course, which seems to be, to be a logical predicate for doing it. We don't have we question whether we have the statutory authority to impose that requirement. Our proposal would be to correct those deficiencies and those shortcomings. And to start, look at monetary penalties rather than preclusion. We want people who are lobbying to register So we don't want to create disadvantages or obstacles to that. And the lobbyist training that we have on our website, completely accessible. It's a great module. We can build some additional things into it to give ourselves greater confidence that the folks who are taking it are actually going through every slide. We can build that in. That's just another investment we have to make in the technology to do it. But it's not hard to take. And all the obstacles that we heard about, the impediments at the first public hearing have been addressed. There's just no reason not to do it. Next set of proposals and questions and proposed financial disclosure guiding questions. The first question really is, are we obtaining information, financial disclosure from a sufficient portion of the workforce? We're now getting financial disclosure statements from designated policymakers and threshold filers at a certain level of grade 24. Is that enough to ensure that competing personal financial interests are not getting in the way of decision-making in the public interest? If we do require more financial disclosure, greater numbers of individuals, do we have the resources? Will we have the resources to deal meaningfully with those? The next question, and it's been part of our legislative agenda from the beginning, is should everybody who files a financial disclosure statement be required to do so electronically? There are lots of problems with paper filings. One is the data is not immediately available to the public. You have a PDF go out there, but it's not in our system and it's not available for electronic review. It puts a heavy burden on staff if we don't have that. The other problem is year-to-year comparisons. When everything is in the system electronically, individuals affirmatively have to make changes if changes are in order. And we have the ability electronically to do comparisons. If things are coming in paper, it's a more cumbersome process. And posting the information is a more cumbersome thing to do, especially when we're required to make redactions, which we do for certain information, like identities of minor children and certain addresses. Third question is, currently under the statute, on the legislative side, filings of FDS statements are made on paper, and they go to the Legislative Ethics Commission first for review. If amendments are required by the LEC, we get to see those. So eventually the filings come over to us, but they're on paper. And everything has to be recorded and translated, and we have a very short turnaround time under the statute for posting the elected officials' financial disclosure statements. The other part of it is, and this is not statutory per se, the members of the legislature themselves, not legislative employees, but the elected officials, are by law subject to targeted FDS review. So our unit, our compliance audit and review unit, scrutinizes every one of their filings. If they have questions, and as you see in the targeted reviews, rails, requests for additional information, go to, give or take in any given period of time, as many as half of the filers. The way the system has been working, our unit does not go directly to the filer with the rails. They go through the LEC, so everything is filtered through the LEC. So there's a lot of translating going on. There's a lot of filtering taking place. The unit thinks it could function much more effectively and efficiently if they could communicate directly with legislators or the designated representatives. That's a change we would like to see. And again, should there be, as we discussed earlier, change in the law so that we can impose late fees for late filed financial disclosure statements. Yes, Commissioner.
Have you given any thought to amending what has to be disclosed? And the reason I ask
Yes.
about that is because, is it ahead and I just haven't gotten there?
No, but.
The only reason I ask that is you've got this form
Yeah.
that has a guidance book that I think is 3 times the length of the form, which says something about the
The
form.
form, right.
And the second thing is, as somebody who finds the most time-consuming part of all is going in and checking the value of your assets, and if they've changed a lot, you had that table of values. It's, what do you do it in 12 cents increment? I mean, it's the smallest increments. And it just seems to me that it's a form that's designed to frustrate, or has the effect of frustrating needlessly, when the intent of what you're trying to get at is usually pretty clear, but it's, what was that word you used earlier? I'd never heard it before. Kludgy?
Kludgy.
What does
Yeah.
kludgy mean? But
Kludgy means awkward.
yeah, oh, that's what I thought it might mean. Yeah, I like that word. I think that form is kludgy.
Well,
We agree. So it just seems to me, this is all well and good, but there's no question that the concept of financial disclosure is valuable, it's essential and all that. But when you've got this awkward form that needs a manual like we have, it seems to me that's something that shouldn't be ignored.
Can I just add to that before you answer? I mean, if I'm right, some of the horror of
Kludginess.
kludginess in the FDS forms is because Public Officers Law 73-A dictates the precise language of the question.
That's what I mean.
So we, the Ethics Commission, are not free to take a plain language blowtorch to that language. And it seems to me that this is something that should clearly be on the legislative agenda. It's, to me, it seems absurd for the legislature to draft a form. That's not usually how the agency legislature relationship works. And there's a good reason for that, which is that over time, an agency becomes aware of better ways to phrase things.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there's any more common response that I get to people learning that I'm on the Ethics Commission than the frown and the inevitable mention of how terrible the FDS forms
Yes.
are.
Yeah.
And so I do feel that, you know, we're going to talk about plain language in this process. I know this is surely something that we could raise for our legislative agenda. Like, please God, let us rewrite these forms so that people don't hate us as much as the forms are sure to make them.
That is one of our proposals. It's not surprising.
Yeah, and for the record, we've been spending years trying to figure out
Yeah.
alternative ways
Yeah.
of asking for the same information or similar information that accomplishes the same result as what we get now, just easier to understand and comply with.
Yeah.
It also, complicates enforcement too, because if you have a difficult to understand form, it makes it harder to demonstrate knowing and willful, knowing an intentional violation of the requirements. And so some of the questions are difficult to navigate. But our proposals are range from the pedestrian to the sublime. How's that? Requiring electronic filing of all financial disclosure statements. It seems like a mechanical kind of thing, and you know, even if we keep LEC review, they ought to be able to do it electronically. And as we are looking at more sophisticated tools for efficiently and effectively reviewing for the purposes set forth in the statute, which to help individuals address conflicts of interest. We're not necessarily talking about penalizing them for having them, but helping them to cure them. If we want to detect them and we have these systems out there, with or without artificial intelligence, that can simplify that process. Having handwritten PDFs is just not an effective way to do it. So we need to move on to, if not to the 21st century, at least to the 20th, in that respect. Again, we would like FDSs from the legislature to be filed directly with us, and for our compliance audit and review staff to be able to deal directly with the filers and not have that filtered through the LEC. We would like to see late fees, and so we need a statutory amendment, we believe, or late filing. Certainly for persistent late offenders, that ought to be the case. One issue that was raised by our own staff is the system that's in place for designating policymakers. The statute gives the commission the authority to provide guidance to agencies in making the designations. We don't have, except for our own staff, we don't have the authority to determine who's a policymaker and who isn't. So we provide guidelines. It is the view of staff that there's inconsistency in how those determinations are made. If somebody's a threshold filer anyway, so we're going to scoop them up that way unless they obtain an individual or class exemption. But particularly with respect to high-level individuals in certain bodies, there's evident inconsistency in how those policy maker designations are being made, and how the rules are being interpreted. And having firm regulations at least would give us some greater assurance that there's consistency in the system. Maybe there should be a process put in place, whether it's done by us or some other centralized way of having a means for reviewing determinations for or against that are made. I mean, interestingly, threshold filers can't seek exemption. There are a lot of requirements they have to meet in order to do that. Policymakers cannot. So once you're a policymaker, you're a policymaker. But if you're not designated as a policymaker, there's no mechanism currently for challenging that. Regulation arguably would give us that authority, should give us that authority. 5 is to have a new system, a new electronic system. Ours is, I'll use another technical, or Potchkey together financial disclosure system. Potchkey together. It's kludgy. It's old technology. Especially now that we've been in touch with other state and municipal ethics bodies. We see that there are lots of extremely effective systems out there. We're meeting agencies. Again, they don't have the volume that we have, where they have a mandate to audit every financial disclosure statement that comes into them. So they're not dealing with 40,000. They're dealing with a fraction of that. But where we're looking at 1,000 financial disclosure statements, they're looking at 4,000 or 5,000. And many of them have devised means to do that electronically that are very, very effective. And but that means having an underlying system where you can get at the data and put these review tools on top of it. 6, just what we've been talking about, revising the form to reduce its complexity, improve accessibility, and to require the disclosure of currently omitted information related to conflict of interest avoidance and detection. One thing that's been pointed out is there's a lot of disclosure of assets. There's not a lot of disclosure of why assets change from one financial disclosure statement to the other. Transactions per se are not necessarily portable in the current form. And those can be keys to potential or actual conflicts of interest. So we think some things can probably drop out. Complexity can certainly be taken out of it, but also more information should be collected. And we have specific ideas about that. And a long-standing bugaboo of ours, we would like authority to post not only the financial disclosure statements of incumbents, but also of candidates for statewide elected office and for the legislature. Keep going. Anybody want to take a break? Are we good? We're-
Fire break.
10 minutes?
10-minute break?
Literally at the
Okay,
midpoint.
Jean, we're going to take a 10-minute break at this point, so we can go off air and put up the slide for just about 10 minutes, and then we'll reconvene.
Stand by, please.
Thank you.
I gotta get.
You're live.
Good. All right, welcome back. We are up to lobbying activity guiding questions. First is the broad question of whether the current self-disclosure system for regulating lobbying activity is sufficient to provide public confidence that all efforts to influence governmental decision-making are conducted within acceptable bounds and are not disproportionately affected by paid lobbying activity or campaign contributions. Very, very broad question that goes to the core of lobbying regulation and the other side of it, which is, of course, the constitutional right to petition government. Second, also affected by that same inquiry, are there additional restrictions or prohibitions that will improve public confidence in the integrity of government decision-making that can lawfully be required or imposed? The third is, and this is something that often comes to us in the form of proposals from outside entities, particularly watchdogs of the government groups, and that's whether campaign contributions from lobbyists and those close to lobbyists should be reported to us or through the campaign finance system. Should those kinds of contributions be limited in some way or regulated in some way? Should other services being provided by lobbyists to elected or would-be elected officials to aid their campaigns or otherwise be reportable to us? And should candidates be required to identify and disclose lobbyists and client contributions they receive in their campaign finance filings? And finally, and this concerns source of funding, which is governed not by Part 943, but by Part 938 of our regulations. Should the Commission's Part 938 source of funding regulations be clarified and strengthened to thwart recurring attempts by funders of lobbying activity to use intermediate pass-through vehicles and other contrivances to evade true source of funding disclosure? We're seeing, in the latest cycle particularly, reporting instances in which various 501c3, 501c4, not-for-profit entities are being disclosed as sources of funding, but not disclosing their ultimate sources of funding. And under the Lobbying Act, there are obligations both to disclose beneficial clients, those who are benefiting from lobbying activity, and those beneficial clients have the obligation of reporting if thresholds are met. It's fairly complicated in a sense, formula of spending a threshold amount in New York State, representing a certain percentage of your overall, 3% of your overall expenditures. Lobbying activity in New York State, you're required to disclose where your money comes from. There are exceptions for 501c3s, and there are exceptions to the exception where funding is coming through or to a 501c4. So there's some complexity there. But ultimately, the purpose of disclosure of sources of funding, and specifically called out by the legislature in PIRA, to have that disclosure. It shouldn't be susceptible to being avoided by putting intermediate vehicles in the way of disclosure. 5, this is an initiative we've been pressing for a couple of years now. Should there be accessorial liability for Lobbying Act violations by those who aid, abet, facilitate, or induce violations of the Lobbying Act by others? And should the Commission's enforcement jurisdiction be available to rein in and penalize those who share responsibility for Lobbying Act violations, even if they don't directly commit the violation? 6, and this is a question that's been litigated a little bit, but not decisively. It's clarification needed that violations of the Commission's lobbying regulations are subject to Lobbying Act penalties. ECRA removed the restriction that was present in the prior statute that required proof of a violation of the statute itself of the Lobbying Act before a penalty could be imposed for a violation of ostensibly of a regulation. There had to be an underlying violation of the statute. That's not present under ECRA. And do we need to clarify that there can be penalties where a regulation of the Commission has been violated? 7, should there be mandatory training of lobbyists, client, and public corporation filing personnel and responsible parties? The Commission's lobbying help desk is extremely active and busy all the time. We're getting, 30,000 plus inquiries in and out currently. Question is, could we avoid some of that by requiring that every lobbying entity and every client that's filing have at least one individual who's responsible for their filings who takes a training course? We provide lots of materials. Carol and Emily, the training group together, have been providing lots of training sessions, lots of training materials, lots of FAQs, lots of opportunities for individuals to learn, but they're not mandatory. As an example, or as a comparative example, under the campaign finance laws as administered by the Board of Elections, campaign treasurers have to take a course in how to report campaign finance matters and how to upload information and the like. Should we have a corresponding requirement? That might ease some of that additional burden and free up folks in the lobbying division to perform other tasks. 8, we talked about the technologies. Do we need statutory authorization to implement technologies that will automate, at least at a high level, the review of lobbying filings and identify filings that warrant further attention, whether audited or some kind of other oversight? Currently, we do review filings coming in for completeness, but audits are conducted on a random basis, dictated by the statute. But now there are technologies that can give us greater assurance and help us identify deficient, faulty, inconsistent, or otherwise non-compliant filings, and ought we not be able to implement those? And do we need statutory authorization to do that? And finally, should we be able to implement technologies to make searching of lobbying information, reporting of lobbying information, and the compilation of that information in various ways more accessible to the public? And there's more. Do we need to be collecting more different information in order to fulfill the objectives of lobbying act disclosure? 11, this is something that goes back to the FERC Commission on the ethics side, but it applies equally on the lobbying side. First-time filers are given the opportunity, if they're detected as having committed a filing violation, to fix their filing without penalty. That kind of blanket exemption or exception doesn't seem to make sense. There ought to be discretion in the commission to determine whether the failure was deliberate or not. Especially as we see new vehicles being created on the fly or for specific purposes in a given legislative session that may or may not be being used to avoid disclosure. There ought to be the ability on the part of the commission to make the determination of whether the violation was knowing and willful, which is a predicate to the imposition of penalties in any event, rather than there being an automatic ability to avoid penalty in those circumstances. The next 12, this is something we've been batting around for a while. There are other disclosures that are required statutorily. The executive law, section 166, for about 11 agencies requires individuals who are representing others before those agencies to fill out a form identifying the client, who they're interacting with at those agencies, and for what purpose. And then that form is to be sent by the agency to us to make publicly available. It's one of the devices that is used by the lobbying division to detect unreported lobbying activity. It's kind of an imprecise way of doing, but it's an indication often, and unregistered lobbying letters are often generated from that information. Another source of information, but there are only 11 agencies that provide that. And we get them sent in whatever form, whether it's a photocopy or a PDF. We're not getting them electronically. And we've been working hard to figure out ways to take that information, get it into databases, put it into machine readable form. The other source of information is Project Sunlight, which requires that certain information, similar information, appearances before agencies be collected by the agencies themselves and reported into a big database that is now managed by OGS. Are there changes to those two systems that would enable our agency to better identify both unreported lobbying activity and underreported or misreported lobbying activity? And finally, are there aspects of the lobbying regulations, and frankly of the statute, that are too complicated? And is that yet another reason why we get so many reach outs to our help desk assistance in front of them? And is that also contributing to insufficient information being provided to provide the kind of transparency that the Lobbying Act is aimed at providing to the public? And our proposals, and there are a number of them, begin on page 17. First is with respect to campaign donations, as well as services being provided by lobbyists. Should they be prohibited or restricted? That is, should lobbyists be limited in their ability or prohibited altogether? They can't make gifts under the Lobbying Act, can't make gifts if they're lobbyists to public officials or those close to public officials, nor can they have their spouses or emancipated children make gifts to public officials. But on the other hand, specifically accepted from the definition of gifts are campaign contributions. And is that a circumvention of the aim of the gift regulations to prevent undue influence from being exercised by lobbyists in that way? Alternatively, or in addition, should lobbyists' clients be required to report campaign contributions to us, and if not to us, to the Board of Elections? And not just lobbyists, but those, who would be in the ambit of the gift regulations. So not just the candidates, but also those close to candidates and having nominees make those contributions. We recommend accomplice or accessorial liability, as we've proposed for the past couple of years in our legislative initiatives. We should make it explicit, whether by regulation or by statute, that violations of the lobbying regulations also constitute violations of the Lobbying Act and are subject to the same penalties. And there are a number of areas where that would be important. For example, coalitions. As we discussed, should there be mandatory training for those who are filing lobbying submissions? Should we explore technological options in legislation to augment our review of lobbying filings? In other words, should we not be limited to, now that the means exist electronically, really to review pretty much everything? Should the randomness requirement be reviewed, at least for some level of review? Seventh, should the source of funding regulations be strengthened to prevent the circumventions that we talked about, of inserting intermediary entities between contributors to prevent true source of funding disclosure? There is a separate provision of the regulations that prohibits doing just that, using an intermediate entity to prevent full disclosure of lobbying activity. That the same should apply with respect to source of funding. Eighth, and Vice Chair Ayers alluded to this, should there be additional information provided? Not just the general disclosures we get now, but more detail as to the actual lobbying activity in which lobbyists are engaging, including more detail about the direct lobbying efforts. The conforming changes, we talked about 9 to the Lobbying Act to conform to the requirements of ECRA, so that we have clients included, and also conforming change so that training, the training cycle is 2 years rather than 3, coincides with biennial registration requirement. 10 require electronic submission of all lobbying filing. 11, this is kind of a question. There are late fees. Late fees can be imposed statutorily for late amendments to registration statements. That's explicit. But we don't have a corresponding provision or provisions for late amendments to bi-monthly and client semi-annual reports. That just seems to be a logical disconnect. That information, frankly, is just as important and maybe more important because those are the reports that show the actual activity that's taking place. And the utility of that information dissipates and maybe vanishes altogether if it's filed months and months after the activity has occurred. And especially now as we're zeroing in and trying to provide information in a more timely way, it becomes ever more important that information be filed in a timely way. And to the extent penalties are an inducement to getting filings in on time, they ought to apply. And I think our conclusion is we need a statutory change to achieve that. So we want to pursue that. And it's important. 12 is a proposal that has come from a number of good government groups. We have looked at other states that do require lobbyists to state in their various periodic reports or the registration statements whether they're supporting or opposing a particular proposal, whether with or without amendments. We've now looked at 8 other states that have requirements. Some are interested in that. You'll see shifts in position. So lobbyists, they change position on a bill, with or without amendment, and then in the particular state or municipality, they may be required to file an amendment to reflect it. Currently, we don't have a statement of position. We have an indication of legislation, proposed legislation on which lobbyists are lobbying, but not which way they're going on it. It would be important in achieving transparency and having that disclosure. And we looked at the practicality of it. And we do see that, although we were concerned at initially that lobbyists and clients would figure out ways to avoid making that disclosure, we do see it working in other states. And we do think it would be an important improvement in our regime to have that. And we should look at ways to simplify. Says here regulations, but also the statute with respect to reporting requirements and restrictions. Questions?
All of these require legislative review. All of these proposals require legislative action.
No, many of them do, but not all of them. Some of them, I believe we can achieve without having legislation. We can, the last one in particular, we can take a look at simplifying some of it. Some of the complexity ultimately comes from the statute itself. And so in those instances, we might have to go back to the legislature. Some of the limitations on, in particular, source of funding. The formula, when you look at it, and Carol has been working very hard with Emily and with Kathy to create calculators to do the calculation of whether you need to report. It gets even more complicated at the next level when you have to determine the fraction of the amount that's spent that you actually have to report. It gets really complicated. There's a lot of math involved. And there's a question as to, at the end of the day, as to the utility of having to go through that exercise. Is the question. I don't know what the answer is, but there's a question that has to be addressed. And that kind of thing is driven by the statute. The regulation tries to unpack it. But there are other things. Coalitions are a truly important part of the regulatory scheme. And over time, the regulation of coalition, the definition of coalitions, structured versus unstructured, has been changed by regulatory action. Maybe there's room for more precision and less complication, but it's complicated. It's not an either or, but some do and some don't require legislative change.
And can you tell me to what degree is our clients late with their amendments to their semi-annual and bi-monthly reports? Is it happening in a significant way?
Defer to Carol.
The original client semi-annual report, we have late fees for an authorization by statute to oppose those. When we put amendments, we don't, which is why that's part of this.
Right.
The statute only requires, and it's 10 days for registration. So registrations are due when they're due. And then if you have an amendment to the registration, you have 10 days to get that in. There's no corresponding.
But there is a lot of
Sources.
amending. When you see the numbers in the operations report, we have,
Lots
you
of
know,
people wait on it.
CSAs filed plus amendments. They can be quite substantial. When you do go through the reconciliation process,
Right.
there's a lot of amending because often not often, always, every year, there has to be a reconciliation of the bi-monthly reports filed by lobbyists. And the client semi-annual reports filed by the clients. They're not reporting identically. It's not a one-to-one relationship, but
So
there are
we
differences.
will say, so let's say we see an issue with, we have a bi-monthly report and we notice that the CSA doesn't match or something like that. So we will send a notice to the client. If we believe it's on the client side that there might be an error, send a notice to the client. We will ask them to amend and we'll give them a 2-week deadline. If that passes, we'll send another one. So we
it doesn't-
send notices.
But I guess my question is, to what extent do they not comply to the 10-day request?
Um,
Is it significant?
Yeah, I would say, I don't have that off the top of my
Just
head because we don't really track it since we can't impose late fees the way I could tell you on the original CSA or the original bi-monthly report and then the original and the amendments. We send late fees on that. And obviously we send $500,000 worth of late fees a year, generally speaking. So that's significant. So yeah, I think there are, I don't know the number, but sure, I think the amendments to bi-monthly reports and CSAs are probably not timely. And we don't have a late fee mechanism to make sure they're timely at the moment, which is difficult. And then, if there's a big amendment, it might not come in for, could be months. And that's, not great for transparency. So that's why we're thinking that this would be a good, additional enforcement tool.
It also delays our ultimate aggregation of the data and reporting of it. Our annual report, where we're fine tuning. The preliminary reports are somewhat rougher in terms of the reconciliations that are done. We want to get the information out. And so, the CSAs and the BIMOs don't necessarily match up, and we note that. It's preliminary. But when we do the annual report, Carol's group takes great care to get to the actual number. And that's a lot of back and forth and a lot of ultimately amending. And it takes months
Thank you.
of work to get it done. So all of the amending is late and it's well after the 10-day period. And it shouldn't be, it shouldn't be on us. And we made a big point of it when we released this year's annual report, because the discrepancies were pretty substantial and required a lot of work to resolve. That it shouldn't be on us to tell lobbyists and clients where they've gone wrong. It should be up to them to get the information right. And there's no reason why clients and lobbyists shouldn't be talking to one another to make sure they're reporting accurately what they're billing and what they're being paid. But it's a huge amount of work and it imposes a huge delay.
Thank you.
And for me, it's a huge source of frustration because we're all anxious to get all this stuff out. And correctly, we're trying to get them to do it the right way. And if there were late fees, maybe, not little late fees, but late fees that correspond to the effort that goes into what we're doing, maybe we'll see that being cleaned up.
Thank you.
But it wasn't, we started out with 20 some odd million and it
18.
was a lot. It's a big, big number in the aggregate. And it's a lot of work to get it down to as close to zero as we can.
Next slide.
Yes. Communications and data accessibility. Do you want to do that, Emily?
Sure.
In your
I
shop?
would love to. Do you want to do the first two?
Sure. The first one is, should the commission be given greater latitude concerning information about pending investigative matters? We do have a regulation in Part 941.16 that gives the executive director a certain amount of latitude in determining when in the public interest it's acceptable for the commission. For example, to confirm or deny whether a particular complaint has been received or if an investigation is going forward or has been closed, but it's very, very limited. By and large, the statute 9411B makes it a misdemeanor to disclose investigative information that's supposed to be confidential. But there are instances in which the public has an interest in knowing whether the commission is or isn't pursuing a particular matter. There are, having said that, there are instances too, and the legislature's made the judgment overall that in most instances, until there's a final determination on an ethics complaint or a lobbying complaint, it's not in the public interest to have disclosure. But that's not uniformly the case. And it would be well to have the provision in 11B be more nuanced and less blunderbuss in its prohibition of disclosing investigative matter before a matter has been concluded. The press, for example, is often frustrated. Emily's group gets these inquiries. Is it true? Somebody will say, I filed a complaint with the commission, and they're, aggressively doing whatever it is they want us to do. And we may or may not be doing it, but we can't say. But there's a huge amount of activity swirling around it. Typically, we're comfortable with legally we can't comment, but there are instances where there may be a compelling public interest. And it would be helpful if the statute permitted that. Same is true of the second one. Again, we're generally precluded. We do have the advisory opinion where we find waiver where there's a mischaracterization of advice we've given. We're prohibited from commenting. The requester of confidential guidance is not prohibited from disclosing it if they wish to. But again, there are instances where it may be in the public interest for us to be able to say, yes, so-and-so did come to us seeking guidance, and we did provide guidance. We don't necessarily have to say what that is, but we don't always have to be a black box with respect to information, guidance information that's come through.
Can you correct what has been missaid?
Well, we have now, by advisory opinion, determined that there's a waiver if there's a mischaracterization of guidance, so you can say.
If I remember right, it's not just a mischaracterization, it's if you publicly discuss the guidance. I don't think I think we decided we don't have to find that somebody's mischaracterized it. It's if you start saying, oh yeah, I talked to the commission, we can confirm that you talked to the commission. We don't have to accuse you of misrepresenting that.
No,
But
fair
my
enough.
specific question is if there is a mischaracterization
Well, then
that we
obviously,
had. My question is, are we compelled to, what does this cover that? Does this give us the ability to
By
disclose our
interpretation,
perception of what was said?
yeah, I mean, we've interpreted the provision in 7B, the section 94, as being in the nature of a privilege extended to the requester, and therefore it can be waived by disclosure.
Mhm.
Okay, you want me to take them through?
Yep.
So since pretty much the inception of the commission, I think number 3 is what we've been working to do to expand the reach of the communications and improve the effectiveness of those communications to get the word out about what the commission's doing. So people know that we are going after those bad actors, we are upholding compliance, and we're offering resources to the regulated communities on how to make sure they're complying with the laws and regulations that are under our jurisdiction. So we've been doing that, as you know, in many ways, and we're looking to see if there's additional ways that we could think about to do that. Something that we've been working on as a result of the survey that we got back, that some things are too technical, aren't easy to understand. You know, we've been creating with Carol and with the ethics group, a lot of resources for like the ethics group. We made sure, like, as you said earlier, like on our ethics page now, it links back to all the relevant advisory opinions by topic. So if people want to see them, they can. The ethics team also created FAQs so that the most common questions they get in advice and guidance and what the answers are, those are all now up there. And then working with Carol's team, we've been doing a lot of intensive stuff with Carol's team in terms of creating short training videos. So people can just like watch like a 10-minute video and learn how to do something. Source of funding, working with Marlena, we put together, Carol Shop put together a great source of funding video that explains kind of step by step how to go through to determine if you need to file a source of funding disclosure. And we have a companion document with that, which is a flow chart. So people will be like, oh, step 1 applies to me. Now it says go to step 3. So they know step by step what to do. And we did that for all of the new regulations that we did at the beginning of the year. And next coming up will be coalitions and coalitions, right? So grassroots and coalitions, right? Because those are the other 2 areas. So we definitely have been looking at this and saying and responding, but are there other things that we could be doing to advance the work of the commission? So that's one question. The next is how can the commission use dashboards and other data to make lobbying and other commission data more accessible to the public and more effective? And we are already looking at dashboards, but kind of part and parcel to that is the system going in. And like we've been talking to other states and cities and seeing their systems and how it works on the front end and how it works on the back end. And it's one seamless system that can raise flags when people are filing to say, no, don't put that in there. That's not correct, because it can see its past filings, and then how that automatically will create dashboards on the other side. You know, it's like, I'm like, ooh, you know, I get all excited about it. But again, that's an issue with funding. But those types of tools, or there are other tools out there that we're not thinking of, that would be great for us to know. And then the last one, I think it gets to a bit about what Sandy was talking about before. We get a lot of FOIL requests or a lot of requests for information, you know, that have to do with areas under the commission's authority that are confidential. So specifically advice and guidance requests and investigations. And even if it's all over the news, as Sandy said, we typically don't confirm or deny. When it comes to records requests, we have, the law says we can't give records to any cases that are closed. We can't give records to advice and guidance requests. So it would be saying specifically which records and when are we able to give them out? Because right now, unless it says like we can expressly do it, we're especially with investigations and advice and guidance, we don't. So and that's caused, you know, several people to comment on that. Yeah, did you want to add?
Yeah, and it's the point that we're not, prior ethics agencies in the state were exempted from FOIL, and we're not seeking to go back to that. Rather, what we're seeking is specific direction. This is what we have to provide or can provide, and this is what we can't provide. And so we're not, as an advocate of disclosure and transparency, we're not put in the awkward position of appearing to be invoking exceptions and avoidance mechanisms, but rather we're complying with statutory directives. And it would be much cleaner. We don't really want to be debating or cast in the position of making judgments about what the agency wants to hold back, but rather provide what we have to provide, and what we can't provide, we won't provide. So we want greater specificity. The way it functions now, we're basically another FOIL actor. And we're susceptible to the same kinds of criticisms, Article 78s and all of that, with respect to information that we provide or don't provide. just cleaner. And it again goes to the core of our mission, which is to foster public confidence in the integrity of government. We have to be as pure in our administration of our mission and of our duties as any agency in government. And it would be much cleaner if we had specific direction. And those are the proposals.
Right, and so here are the proposals.
First draft.
One gets to the first two questions, which is allow greater latitude to comment depending investigatory and advice and guidance requests when it's called for by the public interest. So something that's already in the public realm. Two was explore technological options to improve the systems for reporting and searching lobbying filings. That's, should we start planning, budgeting, thinking long-term about getting a new system that can have everything at once, be much cleaner, have the data dashboards built right in it. Three is the additional tools to enhance the commission's ability to provide data analysis more efficiently. So in the meantime, until we can get that new system, we're looking at data dashboards, we're creating them. We've done the bi-monthly and the CSA reports, but there are other types of reports or dashboards specifically that want to be created. And, you know, some folks have ideas on there that I mentioned us, so we're looking forward to that. Four, we've already been doing all along, as I was talking about, implementing the survey response plans with making more training materials easier to understand, FAQs. And then five is what Sandy was getting to, is in statute saying specifically the records that we must disclose and that must remain confidential.
Okay, so question or maybe comment? So as Sandy knows, said, we're planning to submit a proposal that we adopt federal plain language guidelines or standards to apply to our regs and other documents. Is that something that I should sort of to prepare that proposal? I'd want to write something up and share it with staff. It seems like a relevant part of the discussion for that to get folded into.
Yeah.
So is that something I should just do and share with you all, and then we can talk about it as part of that
Yeah,
conversation?
and as I said, we are preparing a much more detailed, it's very not lazy draft at this point that underlies this. So the discursive part of it, but in terms of the proposal, it would be, we would add it as a proposal.
Yeah, like what the tangible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can put it out for public comments.
Well, you can look at what I draft and decide what to do with it. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, but I think in general, yeah, asking the public if plain language, remarkably, they're still available at plainlanguage.gov. A lot of things no longer are available on federal websites, but they're still out there. But I'll write up a brief proposal and share it with you all, and
Sure.
to the extent it fits into this process, that's great. Thanks. I also wanted to suggest we might break for lunch soon, being after one.
The thing is, we're not gonna have time to finish this today. We have even
We
an
only have
executive
two
session.
We can go
sections.
to
Pretty short.
it's relatively quick.
Finish
I can,
this up and then we'll take.
yeah, let me do
Yeah,
this.
and then
more
we can do
quickly.
lunch and executive sessions.
Compliance audit and review, guiding questions. Again, this is the unit. It's a shared unit between lobbying and ethics, and it functions to carry out the statutory directive. We conduct random audits of lobbying filings, and there's a statutory procedure for that we follow, and then targeted reviews of certain filers, financial disclosure statements, and random reviews, again, statutory procedure. We're doing those. As I noted earlier, given the very high rate of deficiencies that are found both in the audit and in the review process, should there not be a methodology available as an alternative to the random review process to use other technologies, in particular to identify lobbying filings and financial disclosure statements that warrant further attention. So we're not suggesting universal audit and review of every lobbying filing and every financial disclosure statement, but a system that identifies deficiencies, defects, inconsistencies, that kind of thing, and allows the targeting of those filings review. Two is the technology part of the first suggestion of using deficiencies as the methodology for selecting filings for review as opposed to randomness or statutory direction. And two is to use technologies to do it. Three is same point we discussed earlier with respect to financial disclosure statements. Should the audit and review unit be able to reach out directly to legislative filers rather than having to filter their requests for additional information through the LEC? And finally, should commission staff have the same ability with respect to reviews to compel the production of additional information that we have on the lobbying side in the review of lobbying filings? We have the power to use process to compel additional information and documents to be provided to us. Should that not also be available on the FDS side? And our proposal, in fact, exactly that. Have the ability to conduct more and more targeted reviews, have those based on risk that is identified, criteria for conducting further reviews or audits, allow our audit and review staff to deal directly with legislators and legislative staff on their FDS reviews, requests for additional information, and provide the ability of audit and review staff to use compulsory process to obtain additional information bearing on financial disclosure statement reviews. And then there's investigations and enforcement, a number that's beginning on page or slide 23. You want to take a break for this? Sure. All right.
Take a break. Okay, so break.
I'll have lunch.
Do you want to wait for?
5 minutes.
20 minutes? Okay. So Jean, we are going to take a break until 1:30.
You are live.
So we'll resume the comprehensive review.
Yes, thank you.
Presentation by Executive Director Berlin.
Thank you. We're at slide 23, investigation and enforcement. And these are questions. I maybe haven't emphasized enough. We're presenting these in a dual format. So for each of the areas of activity, we've noted the questions that were inspired by the comprehensive review process that we focused on various ways. Not all of them necessarily translate into proposals. But anyway, coming back to investigation and enforcement, first question is whether the commission should have the ability to seek or impose emergent relief. Under prior law, we know from at least one case that was litigated in Supreme Court for Albany County. Supreme Court was of the view that the commission's enforcement powers should be executed in accordance with the provisions of, in that case, subsections 94, 13, and 14 of the executive law. In our case, we have a different arrangement of the enforcement provisions, but that the commission needed to go through the full process from the inception of the investigation all the way through hearing, presentation, and proposed substantial basis report, and so on to the commissioners. The question that arises from time to time under instances where there's an ongoing violation of the statute within our jurisdiction, whether it's the Lobbying Act or the ethics laws, is the commission itself able to intervene in an expedited way? Or do we have the ability to go to court to seek some sort of restraint on the activity. There may be other mechanisms available, other authorities to whom the matter could be referred, who could pursue it. But it's an open question. And we think it's worth at least considering the question of whether some mechanism, whether statutory or not, should be available. The current statute's a little bit different from PURA, and maybe sufficiently different to allow that. Perhaps we can do it by regulation, but it's a question that's come up. And I will say that there are instances in which complainants come to us and they're concerned about something that's happening now. And it's not necessarily responsive to their concern that we can go through the process of sending a 15-day letter, getting a response to the 15-day letter, conducting an investigation, going to the commission with a 9410 sub F report and recommendation. The process is somewhat protracted. So that's a question. Another question that's come up is whether all of those steps are too cumbersome to facilitate the relatively efficient and as prompt as possible resolution of matters from inception through the penalty phase. And the question is whether there's a way to streamline those steps consistent with due process, being cognizant of the rights of respondents and complainants to be heard. Third, should we have a procedure built into how we handle complaints that would allow for consensual resolution earlier in the process? In judicial proceedings now, civil proceedings, it is mandatory to pursue some sort of consensual resolution before fully litigating a matter, at least to explore the prospects for it. And there are different methodologies for tracking those kinds of things, and courts go through different philosophies. It's not uncommon for our proceedings to culminate in a resolution consensually. More often than not, that is how we resolve matters, as in any civil action or enforcement proceeding or criminal action for that matter. But should we have mechanisms for earlier intervention with attempts at resolution, maybe having hearing officers separately serve in the role of mediators to try to resolve matters. Fourth is accessorial liability, again, across the board, not just before that Lobbying Act violations, but here more broadly, but to the same effect. Fifth, a lot of discretion is invested in hearing officers, independent arbitrators, under the current regulations and under SAPA generally, in determining what discovery is or isn't appropriate in a given matter. Concern is that there can be wide inconsistencies from matter to matter for the hearing officer in the amount of discovery that's permitted. Would it not be helpful to have greater certainty going into that process? Sixth, can we put enforcement proceedings on a tighter time table? Part of the time that goes into the prosecution investigation of matters is the function of time it takes to conduct an investigation. That's just the nature of the case. 15-day letter, it's a 15-day letter. Responses rarely come in 15 days. Typically, there are extensions of time. But after that, there can be some protracted periods of time, much of it driven by the availability of interlocutory appeals. So even if a respondent seeks to terminate an investigation and enforcement proceeding by going into court and bringing in an Article 78, before there's a final resolution. Even if the court concludes relatively quickly that the Article 78 or whatever kind of proceeding has been brought is premature, New York courts quite liberally allow interlocutory appeals, and depending upon the appellate division in which the matter is brought, the delay that results from the taking of an interlocutory appeal can be a matter of months, or in some instances, a matter of years. And we have had a number of cases in which it has taken years in an interlocutory matter to get the proceeding back on track. Of course, that would require a change in substantive law to streamline that process. But it's something that is of concern to us, that there's that not an exit into the judicial system, but it's sort of digression into the judicial system that substantially slows our ability to prosecute matters in a timely way to conclusion. 7 is part of our longstanding legislative agenda. Certain violations under Section 74 of the Public Officers Law have no monetary penalty associated with it. We believe they should have the same monetary penalties as 74 F&H violations as other violations of the Code of Ethics. Likewise, whether or not there are monetary penalties, we need clarification that disciplinary action, for example, can be directed by the commission, whether or not monetary penalties are available for the particular violation. Arguably, there's a lack of clarity in Section 9410 with respect to that. And those are the questions we have. The proposals, we've distilled this, staff has distilled this down to are as follows. Have a provision that would allow the commission to pursue or to impose emergent relief, likely by statutory change or amendment. Simplify and streamline the investigations and enforcement process for certain matters. That's more within our control. We can tighten up the procedures we have in Part 941 to move matters along, at least to the extent they're within our control and within the control of an independent arbitrator or hearing officer to move them along. Third, again, provide some sort of formal mechanism for the consensual resolution of matters. Currently, hearing officers view their role, and that's a correct interpretation of our adjudicatory procedures in Part 941 as being essentially to function as a judge, as an adjudicator. And they are not specifically given the authority to convene, for example, a settlement conference in the matter. They're not precluded from doing that. Should we have an affirmative process for creating those kinds of diversions? We think there should be. 4 is, again, accessorial liability. Won't spend any more time on that. 5 is to have, whether legislatively or through our regulations, and I think that would be consistent with SAPA to do that, uniform rules, define the scope of discovery. If we're going to have discovery in advance, and have some reference for rules of evidence in our proceedings. Currently, and again, consistent with SAPA, it's looser than perhaps it should be as a matter of process, and we should consider having formal evidentiary procedures, maybe with some level of relaxation applicable in enforcement actions. 6, again, are same legislative proposal of the past couple of years to have monetary penalties for violations of POL Section 74, 3 F and H. violations. And finally, clarify that the commission does have authority, whether or not there are penalties that can be imposed and whether or not it's imposing them to direct disciplinary action in cases involving violations of statutes that are within our jurisdiction. And those are the questions, those are the proposals staff is putting out for consideration. Our plan is consistent with the schedule laid out is as the next step in the review process. Seek public reaction to the proposals and then bring it all back to the commission after we've had that level of input. Although we've had affirmative proposals coming to us and we've asked for proposals and comments from the public, we haven't put any template in front of the public. Those who would be interested in commenting to get their reactions to proposals that we think are potentially worthy of consideration. So we don't have that level of input. We've done a lot of surveying internally and externally. And we've gone to a lot of opinion makers to get their views through that process. But we haven't actually gotten to the point of seeking public comment back on proposals that, based on what we've done so far, we think are worth at least considering before the commission makes a determination on the formal proposals it wants to make. We are working on, we are drafting a much more detailed and granular report on the process and on how we've arrived at these proposals, but we would like to get this additional element of input from the public and to get that in front of commissioners before any sort of formal outcome from the comprehensive review process is arrived at. So we're not seeking any endorsement at this point from the commission. We're not at that point yet. This is where staff is coming out preliminarily on kinds of changes that would make sense under the mandate in the executive law, in section 94, 1D. To both look at the harmonization or not of the various provisions, ECRA, the existing advisory opinions and regulations, and whether the system is effective. So our goal would be to get these in front of the public, elicit comment, hopefully, if not at the public hearing, we'll keep the record open in the public hearing for a period of time, and then come back for that additional input. And a more formal draft of our report. And see what they're informed by the public reaction, where the commission comes out.
Any thoughts on the process?
I'm going to have a discussion now. I want to begin by saying, I think this document is one of the best, most comprehensive documents I've seen as commission or staff work in my 3 years here. It for its comprehensiveness and the like. That said, I guess as a process matter, I'm a little uncomfortable with this going out to the public for a variety of reasons. One, I see this document as, well, it's so comprehensive and there's like no prioritization here. You know, it's like everything's out. It's like, if you ask for everything, it's here. And I think I think if I were staff, I would think, my God, people could comment on every single thing. That's I mean, what you've got, 3-4 dozen proposals here, some of which we've already committed to as a body, so I don't know why they get mixed in. But in their varying degrees of importance here. And I'm not sure I'm clear as to what the proposals are. You just said a minute ago, they're potentially worthy of consideration. As does the whole staff agree that if we got a lot of feedback saying, great idea, that there would be things the staff would, firmly support, or do they need further consideration? That I just don't know that. I mean, there's so much here. And then just as an overarching concern, there is so many fundamental policy decisions implicit or tied up in these questions and proposals, many of which I don't think the commission has ever opined on or even had a discussion about. That it seems to me premature to put out for consideration by others who may or may not be as well informed as the staff or have the insights we have from those matters we consider confidential to be discussing this yet. So it strikes me as, I guess, first and foremost, premature, because I mean, we are seeing this, maybe others have seen an earlier draft, but we're seeing this for the first time. And I want to go back and say, I think this is great, but maybe it's just my concern that I see there being a high potential for confusion as to how committed anybody in this room or on the staff is to any of this. It looks like a finished product. And I guess that's where I go back to, it's well done. But to the extent it could be confused as a finished product, when in fact it's a first iteration of a 3-year-long project so far, I think we could be creating confusion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of them should have said preliminary presentation. The other thing is, and I alluded to it, we think it's important, well, two things. One, the statute doesn't call for a prioritized review of the statute's regulations, advisory opinions, and the effectiveness of the system. It asks for a comprehensive review. So we didn't put any constraints or parameters on the review. We didn't take anything off the table. This is literally the kitchen sink in response to the request for a comprehensive review. We did no filtering. You're seeing, I mean, literally no filtering out of, that's a great idea, but the time has not come. We thought about that. We've thought, there may be things that will never achieve the kind of support that we need legislatively, for example, for whatever reason. We recognize the need for prioritization. The importance of public input, we think, is critical because not just the need for transparency, but the need to have public confidence that we're not holding anything back. These are things that we think may be pie in the sky, ought to be considered as changes, adjustments, modifications of things that are out there that, if implemented, would make what we do, what the commission is asked to do, more effective and make more likely achievement of the end goal of fostering public confidence in the integrity of state government. We have done a lot of surveying, done surveying internally, we've done surveying externally, we've done surveying within the state, we've sought opinions from the outside. We've guided with our questions to some extent, the responses we've gotten, asking questions, are there impediments to your ability of your agency to comply with the ethics law? So that's not like an open-ended thing. It wasn't like, tell us anything you have on your mind. But we haven't put, for good reason, we didn't want to tilt the playing field. So we haven't yet put specific proposals in front of either external or internal users. We think it's important to do that, though, and to get feedback, to find out, yeah, that's a great idea, but it's not going to work for the following reason. And so you shouldn't be giving that a high priority, even if it's a great idea. We haven't put that kind of thing out there to elicit specific responses. So from the staff perspective, the next step for us would be to get that feedback, have that additional base of information, and then we would come back to the commission with recommendations informed by that kind of reaction from the public. We have to start somewhere, and I think that would be important for commissioners to have, along with all the other information we've developed. And as you say, develop priorities. We're well aware from the work we've done in trying to advance a legislative agenda that you can't go out there with 25 or 30 things. It's hard enough to do it with a half dozen. And say these are the most important 6 things to us. There are a lot of things that are important to us, and even among those 6, there's some that are more important than others. And obviously, any effort would be more effective if we were only pushing one idea, put all of our effort behind it, and took that 20-minute period or half hour or whatever we get with a relevant committee or committee chair and staff to just push that one idea. So we know that. We're also, and we discussed this way at the beginning of the process, we're not the FERC commission. We don't have scores of people supporting the effort to develop a full statutory scheme, a body of recommendations. We're not seeking to rewrite the Lobbying Act. We're not seeking to rewrite Executive Law Section 94. We're not even seeking to rewrite Section 107 of the Civil Service Law or Section 5-B of the Legislative Law, or any portion of Legislative Law Section 80, except to the extent that some things go through the LEC that we think should go directly to us. We haven't, touched things that other commissions have expressed concerns about. These are a bunch of ideas that we think, maybe that's a technical term, a gaggle of adjustments that we think would make our work more effective. But it's by no means the end report. And I apologize if it kind of looked like a finished product. It was not intended to be. And that's what I said at the outset. We're not asking for a vote. If you really hate something, let us know.
I guess my question to sort of follow up on that is like, at what point would we have input? And maybe even like, I just don't feel like some of these things I have enough of an understanding of to even weigh in on, like emergent relief. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean we're going to be issuing injunctions, or that we're going to go? It's just, I guess at what point do we expect us to have that facility that we're able to give our input and our opinions on these things?
Vice Chair.
I think there's sort of a couple of ways you could approach this. Obviously, the gathering and reflecting on policy proposals should start with staff in the first instance. So the question is sort of, how do you order the events that follow? Do do you have staff gather up all the proposals they think are worth discussing and then go to the public for feedback and then come to the commission? Or do you have staff come to the commission and have the commissioners whittle it down and say, well, we don't agree with this one and this one? Personally, I think it makes more sense to go to the public first rather than, I mean, obviously, if there's specific things in here that people think are bad, then let's talk about that. But my sense is it makes sense to find out what feedback we get from the public before we, the commissioners, go through a process of sort of whittling these down. I just don't want to spend a lot of commission time on things that, you know, we may hear very cogent objections from people in the public and think, okay, staff now thinks it's a terrible idea. Well, I'm not sure that like, there's a risk of redundancy in the process.
Yeah, I guess I kind of concur with Nancy in that. I agree that staff should be in the forefront of framing the subject for us. But I don't feel comfortable releasing to the public a comprehensive plan, which I have very little understanding of.
Well, I don't think this is supposed to be a comprehensive plan.
It's a proposed comprehensive review.
I took it as a list of topics on which staff thought public comment would be helpful, not a proposal that we adopt these things. I think this is Sandy, you can tell me, but I didn't take this as here's what we want to do. I took it as here's what we want feedback on.
So, yes, I mean, that's exactly correct. You would like to get public feedbacks on these things that we've distilled from the process we've gone through. So
I'm just looking at, again, we can't agree on what this is. And this is what you were saying to the public.
Well,
It says,
well,
for
I
me,
can
okay,
tell you,
I'm just reiterating what I've been given, comprehensive review presentation. So all I'm saying is that I'm seeing this for the first time. I think it's been a tremendous amount of work. It's very comprehensive. It's overwhelming, to be honest with you. And as I said to you all during the break, it's hard for me to engage, to ask meaningful questions. You ask me, do I like it or dislike it? I don't have enough information, nor have I have enough time to digest it, to even speak intellectually on this topic. I don't know what I like and I don't like, because I really haven't had time to understand and comprehend. And you're asking me to let this go to before the public before we do that. I mean, you're suggesting that we put it out to the public for review. I think we should put something out to the public for review, but not until, as a commissioner, I have a full understanding of what it is we're asking and expecting. And I just didn't have that time. But it's not to diminish the work, and the quality. It's just that I'm not at a point where I've digested it, understand it, and be willing to submit to the public.
Commissioner Groenweg and then Commissioner Carvalho.
Well, I've already had a chance to speak, so why don't we let
Commissioner Carvalho?
Yeah, we're talking about putting this out in the public, but it's out in the public right now, right? We're discussing it, and I imagine that it'll be filed with our documents, no?
it depends public is.
We are. I'm sorry?
No, continue, go ahead.
That's my question. Is, we did the PowerPoint in public session. It's available. It's taped, I imagine. So I just don't know why we're discussing whether to put it out or not, because it's out there, is all I'm saying. That's my point. Am I right?
Well, it was displayed, yes.
Yeah, well, we
It's worth discussing whether it should be out.
Well, I guess what my comment was going to be is, and it follows on Dolly's comment. You're right, it is out there, but I think what could be helpful is clarifying what this is as a matter of process, kind of where Commissioner Harris was going. It does not reflect anything more than what you call it. Where did I just see that word?
Proposals for public comment.
Yeah, no, but I wanted to
Preliminary.
develop preliminary proposals. That's all this is. This reflects all these things, but that there has been no, as you said, they may be worthy of support, but they, at a minimum, they require further input from those who could be affected by these things. And that, I think, would want to clarify that the commission has done nothing more than say it's an appropriate document for soliciting input, but that it doesn't reflect any decision-making by the commission
Correct.
on it. I think so long as that kind of a Q&A
Not
type
gonna ask that
document is accompanies this.
We could frame it that way, like preliminary proposals for the commission to consider, right? So like we're putting, these are the proposals that we came up for the commission to consider.
Well, after we receive public comment, so that the commission's consideration is informed
Exactly.
by the response from the
Exactly.
affected
Exactly.
communities. That's,
Yeah, exactly. So knowing it's out there that you guys haven't put your stamp on these, but these are the ones that came out of the process. The next step is to get public input, so the commission has everything to consider, all pieces to consider from the public, all the spectrum of proposals that we got that could go out there to then narrow it down and prioritize and say which ones they like, don't like, or consider later. We can frame it like that.
yeah,
We
or
can
point
definitely
out
frame it like that.
issues that we haven't identified or might not have been aware of with particular proposals, or other things that maybe will be inspired by these proposals. But we haven't had that sort of guided presentation to the public of concrete-ish, if you will, ideas for further consideration.
Commissioner Carbone, did you want to say something else?
Yes, I do. I also just want to add, and maybe it's worthwhile to note it, you know, when we, with this document, a lot of these proposals were already or are already part of our legislative agenda. And a lot of them were raised at public, you know, different public meetings that we've had, the 2 public meetings that we've had. So I wonder if it's worthwhile just to note that those are already on our agenda and we proposed them.
Yeah, we could delineate those ones that are on the list, like a asterisk at the end of the page that says this was on the, or 24,
Have
20.
been. We don't know, we haven't had the legislation committee meeting. We don't know whether they will be.
Well,
Yeah.
it passed, so it passed. So
Passed,
this one is
yeah.
before.
Yes,
We can,
passed.
we can just put a note that says it was on that
Sure.
agenda. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we try to point it out, so through them.
I'm sorry.
Sure. I thought you had completed your remark.
I have, thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Ayers?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, for me, the key is these are proposals that the commission will or may be considering in the future, not, right? These are things that have been put on the table by staff, by groups. This is, I think that it's a really good idea to go into the public hearing with giving folks some sense of what's on our table for the future, so that they can think about whether it raises flags for them or whether they support it. You know, it's a good idea to give them an idea of what's on our agenda for the future, rather than just going in, you know, blank and saying, what ideas do you have? But I do think, to Claudia's point, this just says comprehensive review presentation and proposals, so it would be good. I don't know if that would, I'm not saying that would alleviate your concerns, Claudia. I don't know whether it would or not, but it would help me to frame it more clearly, so that people don't think, oh, you know, this is what we're going forward with. No, not necessarily. We haven't considered a lot of these.
Well, and I think the addition of 2 words that would say preliminary and call the proposals potential, because that's what you would characterize them as.
Preliminary potential
Proposals potentially awarded. No, I would just say potential proposals, because that's what they are.
Yeah, we had played with the word tentative at one point. We thought that was too assertive.
Yeah, it's used.
So we pulled tentative out, because
And
we're
but-
not at the point of them even being tentative.
But
I'm not sure any of those words really communicate the key thing, that the commissioners haven't yet considered these. Because preliminary suggests, I think preliminary to what?
Potential for the commission to consider.
That's good.
I think
Yeah.
we need to, it's not as simple, but that's the language
I think
that we
that's-
need to like have as the heading and have as like
Potential for
in the,
consideration.
yeah, in the explanation. Sorry.
Yeah, after we obtain public comment.
Well, I think when we put them out,
We're
so
talking
that
about
they
what we-
know
what
that
we
the
put
commission
out
hasn't
at this
Yeah,
considered.
no. Well, to
Well, the
consider after.
The commission.
Oh, I see
has
what you're saying, to consider,
deliberated.
yes.
To
I'm going
consider
have that.
after
Yes, yes,
public
yes,
comment.
yes.
We're-
After public comment, yes.
And I just have one other really minor question that's going out in this format. When I look at the timeline, I'm not sure I understand how the September 16 meeting of the admin committee to discuss the possible budget for the next year relates to this whole thing. I mean, I understand we want to have whatever becomes the agency's draft budget and our approved budget has great implication, but I think in the overall scheme of this time frame, that's kind of.
It's, yeah, and it's an issue for us because there are technological upgrades at the very least, if not long-term capital projects that will key back into some of the proposals, if they survive. For upgrading systems and adding capabilities that we don't have that have budgetary implications.
Or like
But yeah, by
things-
September 16th, we're not going to have
Well, there's
those
things that we
for-
know that, like, we want to do the dashboards, there's a fiscal with that, right? We know that the commission supports that, you've all talked about that. There's other things that we've talked about that maybe don't have a big fiscal, but it's a little fiscal, like being able to look at FDS statements more closely. So that has a little fiscal. So like things like that, we have a list of these that are like, they have a budgetary impact. We're not gonna say, let's put in the $250,000 for the new PSQ, the Public Search Query Lobbying Application, but there's these little considerations that we just want to make sure, that if we're putting them in the budget, that it goes through the budget committee or the administration committee for those little things this year that maybe we could find room for to chunk off. That, I think that's where we're thinking this year would be these small instances. And then in future years, hopefully, the state and us would be in a better position to say, okay, now we do want to, maybe we could figure out how to structure the financing for the new PSQ,
But those are
over
things,
multiple years.
but those are budget items, for things we've already agreed upon in principle, right?
No, we
Some.
haven't. I mean, one of the things we would like to do and work into the budget is hopefully working with ITS, but conceivably going outside, is to follow up on a recommendation the good government groups made to have a technology audit of the commission conducted. We've been doing that on our own at no expense other than staff time. But we're
Right, gathering
approaching
all
the
the
point where we need some level of expertise that we don't have internally. And there may be a cost associated with that because we know we want to upgrade the FDS system. We have upgraded the investigation enforcement tracking database. We have to, look at something with respect to lobbying because there are more sophisticated systems out there. So but we're not at the point of saying, yeah, we're going to buy or contract for.
I guess for me, it makes that look more, it seems premature. No, it doesn't seem premature. It feels as if we're saying this is going for, this would be part of the budget review, this would be part of the budget review, makes this more permanent feeling.
Well, we're not gonna be able to do this in a year, right? And there's still gonna be good ideas on the table. So we are gonna have to have conversations about when do we want to start asking for money for these new systems? So there's definitely going forward and years forward, going to have to be conversations about what do we want to prioritize in the budget? What do we want to prioritize in the legislative agenda? So
Yeah.
they do, it's not all the budget for sure, but it's a piece of the budget.
But this is just the admin committee.
Right.
And the decision you're talking about is a full commission decision. So I just think it needn't be there because the decisions you're talking about are decisions to be made by the full commission. And
That's fair.
Yeah, I don't. I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
So the admin committee will actually be meeting to talk about the budget, but excluding all these proposals
Yeah,
Well,
well,
there might be one or two, like.
that we
small
haven't
ones.
considered before, that weren't in our, right, okay.
And then, once the admin committee, as the rest of the budget goes to the full commission, that's what it looks like.
yeah, but I'm just saying right now,
Just don't put
when,
it up.
when you're talking about the next steps in the comprehensive review, you don't need to mention the admin committee because that's just a working committee that can only, as we all know, only make recommendations, no final decisions. So until the full commission's decided it, it's academic.
Can I just add to, I think part of what may be confusing here is that there's obviously overlap between what's in the comprehensive review and stuff we'd be doing anyway. Like, make our public search query better, I think is something that staff has been doing full-time since the commission started and would continue doing even if we didn't have a statutory mandate to do a comprehensive review. So every year you're looking at how do we make our computer systems better. Putting it on this makes sense because we want public feedback on what exactly should we be doing to make our systems better. So it's
Well-
good that it's included, but
I mean,
there's overlap.
the idea to get a new one kind of came out through this process because we heard a lot of feedback about some of the functions that aren't available in ours that are available in others. And then we started exploring more to be like, hey, this is worthy. And there's a budgetary, right? So I kind of see as the comprehensive review and the priorities of the commission, that's kind of the starting point to prioritize, for each year, like where we're going. Here's the whole scope, right? So for this year, where are we going? Where do we want to tentatively put on for next year? And what do we need to do to get there? Because all of the stuff is just the exploratory and writing an RFP of that magnitude. That's going to take a long time before we even, advance it. So it all kind of interlocks together. We just don't want to make sure that we're advancing something in the comprehensive review, but then we don't have the budget or we don't have the legislation, right? And then it's, well, do we need legislation to do that? All right, so when we get the legislation, then we can implement and get the money or whatever, it all fits together. Strategic plan.
All right, so let's move on. I think we're going to need to go into executive session, so, and then we'll complete the rest of the public session
Okay.
agenda after the executive session. So
All
I'd
right.
like to entertain a motion to enter into executive section to address matters concerning employment, personnel, pending litigation, and investigative enforcement matters that are confidential.
I'm sorry, before we make that motion, I just want to make sure, because one of the commissioners has raised concerns about this going to the public. I think, as I understand it, currently staff's plan is to do that, so somebody could make a motion on that topic if they wanted to. I just wanted to make sure there was an opportunity for anybody to make a motion who was inclined to make a motion. Okay, not hearing anything. I just wanted to make sure that was out there. It's fine.
No, I got the sense that all the commissioners were in line with what's now proposed.
And indeed, it seems correct.
I said, do I have that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Vice Chair is, and Commissioner Edwards second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion carries. I will now go into executive session.
You are live.
Welcome back to the public session for the Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government. I will ask Executive Director Berlin to give a readout of what was handled in the executive.
Thank you, Chair James. In executive session, the commission discussed matters related to litigation and legal advice. The commission discussed an application for an exemption from post-employment restrictions pursuant to Public Officers Law, Section 73(8)(b). The commission authorized steps in several investigative matters. The commission closed 9 matters, and the commission discussed other investigative matters. And that's it.
All right, thank you. So the next item on our agenda is item number 6, a request for approval of exemption certification pursuant to Public Officers Law 73(8)(b).
I have a motion to offer. So I move that the commission grant a certificate of exemption for the request for a period of 9 months and express the sense of the commission that we're granting the request because we want to avoid potential harm to the community and to the employee affected, but that in our view, when an agency implements an across-the-board voluntary retirement program without making any provision for exceptions for essential employees, then absent some extraordinary circumstances, the agency has created its own problem. And in the future, now that we've expressed the sense of the commission, we were inclined to deny any such requests. And so we plan to work with staff to make sure that it's clear to agencies that in the future, an across-the-board voluntary retirement program will preclude the agency from seeking an 8B exemption. That's the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Edwards?
Even easier, I second with regard to the exemption and the policy statement. I think it's an important one. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Okay.
Is there going to be a renewal? Is there an opportunity for renewal,
No.
or is it 9 months? I don't think that's part of the motion.
I will amend my proposal to indicate that to add that there will not be an opportunity to renew after the 9 months. Thank you, Commissioner Caraballo.
And my second stands.
Great.
So, Commissioner Austin seconded. All right, is it any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Exemption is approved for 9 months. But we just caveat, it's included in the motion.
I just wanted to add a note. When we work with staff, what I may have neglected to say is that in our view, my understanding of my colleagues' perspective on this is we hadn't previously clarified that an across-the-board retirement incentive would create this problem. And so I said it was for fear of harm to the community and the employee, but it was primarily because it wasn't clear before. We're giving the 9 months because it wasn't clear. Now it's clear. So future agencies shouldn't expect that a showing of harm to the community will enable them to get an 8B exemption. And I think it's a sense of my colleagues that when we work with staff to explain this, we'll make that clear as well. Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a motion for the permanent adoption of NYCRR Part 939.
Yes, Michael, or I could just introduce it. Part 939 governs and provides procedures governing requests for extensions or waivers of training requirements under the provisions of Section 94(8) of the executive law. The rulemaking was commenced at the May 14th Commission meeting. The Commission adopted the set of regulations on an emergency basis at that time. At the last meeting in July, the Commission extended that emergency adoption. As I understand it, no comments have been received. Is that correct, Michael?
I think they're muted.
Oh, they're muted.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. And the provision part is now on for permanent adoption.
I move we adopt the rule.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so Commissioner Austin has moved that we adopt the rule. Vice Chair Ayers has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Who made that?
So-
Who made that? Who made the motion and seconded it?
Lynn made,
Myself.
I seconded.
The next item is the proposal meeting schedule. I have I. Anybody have any problems with any of the dates?
Let me just say that for the May date, I think it's okay for me, but I do have one child who is graduating from a couple of programs in May. And while I know the university graduation is the following week, I'm assuming his two department graduations will be as well. But subject to that, should be fine.
We don't have to adopt anything.
No, no, we'll have it on for adoption at the next commission meeting. So if everyone will just double check their schedules in the meantime.
Any new or other business?
Wasn't there something that we tabled?
What's-
Closed session and.
There's something
No, that was
Investigation report.
In executive session.
That was an
taking
executive
table
session.
tonight. Executive session.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Austin, Mr. Edwards, seconded. Are you all in favor?
Uh,
Aye. We're adjourned.